A strange energy pulsed through the chained gate. Runes flickered as memories stirred in the void. An ancient tale resurfaced of a forbidden door connecting realms no one dared speak of anymore. As the door cracked open, darkness spilled through. Figures emerged, unaware of what truly awaited them. The rift howled. A demon of flesh surged forward, hungry for those who'd awakened its prison. Behind jagged teeth, its truth echoed this wasn't salvation. It was a curse sealed for a reason. Demons invaded through the broken world gate, burning homes. The red sky echoed with endless screams and death. Flames devoured cities. The air thickened with ash. Countless humans perished, their dreams buried in crimson soil. Then a single human stood defiantly against the dark, a king who challenged fate and wounded God. When he died, light poured from the heavens. The beasts shrieked and vanished into a swirling void. Afterward, strange powers awakened inside survivors. Marked by fate, they carried remnants of the vanished creature's strength. Peace returned. Cities healed. People smiled again, believing the nightmare had passed and balance was restored forever. But far beyond the cheers and myths, one boy quietly walked beneath the sky's silent gaze. He wasn't part of stories sung in halls, but he had stood where angels dared not. It was he who answered the dying king's final plea, when no gods chose to listen. That boy, with eyes of storm and silence, knew the truth behind miracles he made them real. He stood alone in the shattered hall, light breaking through, casting long shadows across silent stone. With one last glance, he stepped away, leaving behind the battlefield, the corpses and unspoken sacrifices made. No one called his name. No one followed. Even heaven remained quiet beneath his final exit. The world moved on. Twin moons watched a distant temple glow gently beneath peaceful, sleeping mountains. Inside, nobles gathered in golden halls, unaware of the boy's deeds or the blood behind peace. Nobles gathered beneath the crystal chandeliers, unaware of distant turmoil as laughter masked ignorance and arrogance. Lady Seren walked gracefully, her poise flawless, but her attention drifted toward whispers hidden in the crowd. Among polished shoes and polished lies, quiet rumors of danger leaked from trembling lips and half-filled glasses. Far away, deep in shadowed woods, wreckage lay broken darkness oozing from its cracks like rotting breath. Seren's expression darkened. While others indulged in luxury, something monstrous stirred beyond sight, and she knew it. Golden light bathed the stage as Seren stepped forward, the room falling into breathless, expectant silence. Eyes fixed on her, the audience waited. Whispers filled the air, rumors, admiration, envy cloaked in elegance. But something shifted. Seren froze. Her eyes widened, not from nerves but from a chilling, unseen presence. Faces below twisted in shock and fear. She hadn't sung, but terror already gripped their collective hearts. A deafening pulse echoed. Seren turned instinctively. Something had arrived. Not awe, not wonder, something unnatural. The stained glass shattered as crimson light surged down, ripping through stone, silk, and startled silence. Screams filled the hall. Guests scattered in panic. Shadows fell like blades from the ruptured ceiling. A twisted energy burst forth, distorted, violent, unstoppable. Everything around it trembled under its raw, chaotic weight. Seren stood frozen, eyes wide. The world around her dissolved into red glare and pulsing horror. Just before the blast hit, a cloaked figure struck, shielding her with magic and speed like lightning. A monstrous creature erupted through the smoke, snarling, eyes glowing red, its jagged teeth thirsting for blood. The cloaked protector gripped Seren tightly, shielding her from the beast's roar and the splintered debris. Her wide eyes locked onto his face, heart racing not from fear but from stunned recognition. With a swift motion, he twisted through the air, dark energy spiraling around his every step. The beast lunged. The boy met it head-on, silent, composed, his cloak swirling like a shadowed flame. More beasts crashed through the stained glass, claws bared, hunger thick in their gurgling, feral screams. The cloaked figure moved faster, his blade danced in arcs, tearing through darkness like lightning through smoke. Seren staggered back, heart pounding. The air buzzed with residue magic and the stench of ash. Servants rushed to her side. Shaken, she barely heard them, her eyes fixed on the black figure. She rose slowly, trembling. One thought pushed through the chaos. That person. He's not just anyone. Seren's breath caught. Eyes wide, pulse racing, she stared as realization dawned deeper than any fear. A shadow moved beneath moonlight, controlled, powerful. the signature aura unmistakable to anyone who knew the legends. Under twin moons, he stood unbothered, surrounded by silence, corpses, and smoke. The infamous Black Mage returned. Wind swirled around him, echoing past chaos. He didn't speak, his presence said everything words could not. While others urged retreat, Seren resisted, her gaze fixed forward, whispering, "It's him, the Black Mage." Gasps spread like wildfire as nobles realized the cloaked figure wasn't rumor, it was the Black Mage. People rose from the wreckage, stunned. Even the proudest watched silently, remembering legends they once dismissed. He stood still, framed by moonlight and smoke, his presence colder than the night around him. Seren met his gaze, uneasy, unsure. No words spoken, but something unshakable passed between them both. She took a breath, trembling. Not from fear, but from awe, the one she longed to meet. The mage stood calmly, bathed in fading magic light. His expression softened, yet remained unreadable. Seren and her maid looked on, alert, but silent, unspoken tension hanging gently between awe and concern. He took one step forward, eyes locked with Seren's, his presence measured and deliberate, not threatening. With a composed breath, he placed a gloved hand over his chest, as if weighing something. Then, quietly, he spoke with purpose. Whatever came next, it wasn't casual. It would change everything. Amid shattered marble and fading tension, the Black Mage extended a paper slip, calm and precise. Seren blinked in disbelief. After everything, all he wanted was an autograph with a name included. The academy stood tall under the bright sun, hiding secrets darker than its polished white walls. Students whispered as rumors spread a Black Mage had returned, cloaked in mystery and silent purpose. Among them walked Rude, his expression cold, thoughts distant, wondering if peace would ever return. He ignored their stares and words, each step echoing louder than the questions left unanswered behind him. Despite their curiosity and praise, he despised the crowd. Solitude was the only comfort he trusted. Rude clenched his cloak tighter, troubled by memories that surfaced the moment he crossed the academy gates. A surprised voice echoed behind him. Someone had recognized him, breaking his fading thoughts in an instant. Ren called out, her steps quick, holding reports as concern filled her eyes at Rude's distant expression. She questioned his mission's outcome. His silence spoke volumes before he admitted the truth with quiet weight. As she clutched the documents tighter, her voice softened. She knew the cost of his success. Ren noticed something hidden in Rude's hand, but his expression turned unreadable the moment she asked. Feigning confusion, he dismissed it as nothing, hiding tension behind his usual calm and practiced indifference. He turned away, excusing himself quickly, mentioning the master and suggesting a meal later to distract her. As he walked, a paper fluttered from Ren's folder unnoticed, until his sharp eyes caught it. Lifting the page, his eyes narrowed. Whatever was written there had stirred something deep and dangerous. The paper revealed a bold poster, Rude's image printed beside an offer for magical contracts. Shock froze him in place, while students screamed his codename, drawing attention like fire in dry grass. Ren panicked, caught between embarrassment and frustration, realizing exactly what had just fallen into Rude's hands. She defended herself, blushing furiously, claiming it wasn't her idea and blaming the master for everything. But Rude had already vanished into the hallway crowd, leaving Ren to call out with concern. The master calmly sipped tea, unaware of the chaos unfolding beyond the peaceful view outside his window. He sighed with contentment, enjoying the weather and rare quiet that rarely lasted in his office. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted the calm, echoing footsteps rushing in without a hint of restraint. Startled, he turned and grumbled, questioning who would dare enter like a storm crashing through doors. There stood Rude, silent, intense, and clearly not in the mood for any small talk. The master beamed as Rude entered, delighted, greeting him warmly with tea still in his hand. Rude remained silent, his piercing stare sharper than words, prompting concern instead of comfort from his teacher. Accusations flew. Rude revealed the embarrassing flyer, calling out the one truly responsible for its existence. Feigning innocence, the master checked the paper, then suddenly flung it out the window without hesitation. Laughing it off, he claimed it vanished while Rude stood frozen, rage brewing behind unreadable eyes. Rude finally snapped, voice sharp with frustration as he glared, demanding answers for the outrageous stunt. He recalled the chaos whispers, stares, and posters, all without his approval or even a warning. Accusing eyes burned into his teacher, who had orchestrated the whole mess without Rude's consent. The master chuckled, teasing him like a child, calling him shy while sipping tea like nothing happened. Rude slammed the table, seething, while the master smiled nervously, knowing he'd gone a bit too far. The master beamed, holding up a completed request, thrilled that Rude had followed through at last. Rude, unimpressed, declared it would be the final time he did anything so ridiculous again. The master stammered, clearly not expecting rejection, trying to stop Rude from shutting everything down completely. He insisted Rude's popularity couldn't be ignored. Students were already flooding him with fan mail and admiration. Still ignoring him, Rude left as the master sorted letters, misreading a very personal one from Ren. Hearing the word attack, the master's expression shifted, concern blooming across his usually cheerful face. Rude corrected him, explaining it wasn't a person or faction. The threat came from unknown creatures. These monsters had no clear origin, only hunger and madness, breaking through defenses like mist before sunrise. The master, now serious, admitted it was troubling and needed deeper investigation beyond surface-level assumptions. He turned toward the archives, determined to uncover whatever darkness had returned before it spread further. As their talk ended, Rude turned to leave, but his mentor's voice cut through the silence. He asked how long Rude would hide behind the name and look of someone he wasn't. Rude paused, letting his true name echo a name he buried under missions, fear, and power. A smile flickered across his mentor's face, proud and sad, knowing what that name truly meant. Dark energy flared as Rude embraced his codename, Blow, stepping fully into the strength he must wield. With a surge of energy, Blow initiated his awakening, releasing the sealed strength within him. The master blinked in surprise, startled by the sudden power shift, shaking the air around them. Blow now stood transformed, hair lightened and aura fierce. The contrast to Rude was unmistakable. The master hesitated, then casually admitted he'd gotten the autograph, still as unserious as ever. Grinning, he slammed his desk, demanding a photo next time, missing the seriousness of what just happened. Blow stands quiet, transformed and unreadable, as tension settles between him and his watching, concerned mentor. The mentor, calm but serious, tries to understand Blow's behavior, his expression touched with subtle sadness. From across the desk, he speaks firmly, warning Blow of growing danger and unwanted attention after that day. Sunlight cuts through the tall windows as the mentor explains how enemies now seek Blow relentlessly. His cheerful tone fades completely. Worry settles in his eyes as the weight of reality returns. The master catches Blow holding a printed photo, surprised and delighted that one of them survived intact. Blow, irritated, glares and demands the photo, clearly fed up with the constant teasing and distractions. Instead of handing it over, the master smoothly changes the subject, pretending to weigh his decision. He introduces a major event, a secretive, high-class auction that only opens a few times yearly. A rare magic stone will appear at the auction, glowing powerfully, said to contain a unique mana. The master grows serious, repeating the target, a high-purity magic stone rumored to hold immense potential. He reveals the complication: another unknown party already knows about the stone and may act first. An image of a crowded auction hall appears, the stone displayed as bidders eye it with desire. With a sly smile, the master hints that this mission may be more entertaining than expected. He watches Blow leave, falling quiet, then picks up another report with unease clouding his usual calm. The master hesitated, deciding not to reveal the document he quietly held behind his composed smile. He knew Rude would be furious if he found out about the admission done without consent. In his hands, the Helios Magic School acceptance letter gleamed, a secret tied to Rude's future. A vast hall stood beneath an artificial sky, its ceiling reflecting stars above a polished ceremonial floor. Students in formal uniforms faced forward, their expressions serious, aware something significant was about to unfold. A massive angelic statue dominated the hall, while high-ranking officials gathered below, ready to begin the formal proceedings. One official extended his hand toward the crowd, signaling the start. Everyone focused their attention without hesitation. Escorted by guards, a leading figure walked forward. His composed posture showed authority and intent to address all. The host smiled with practiced confidence, his eyes scanning the room before he prepared to speak. He raised his voice clearly and proudly. The long-awaited event would begin today's exclusive, secretive auction. Guards stood ready as the hall quieted, all attention fixed on the platform beneath the statue. The audience murmured, scanning the room. One girl noted the crowd's size and the importance of today. Curious about the featured item, she whispered about Shazian, a rare magic stone everyone wanted to see. The girl scanned the room, her curiosity shifting into concern as more powerful mages entered the hall. Spotting a cloaked figure nearby, she leaned closer, unsure if he shared her unease or knew more. He stood calm, hidden under his hood, eyes sharp. He wasn't there for treasure, but purpose. While others sought power or wealth, he had another plan entirely. Her question barely reached him. Rude? Rude's gaze narrowed. A quiet smile formed. Despite it all, he thought, it may be fun. In a dark office, the agent was briefed. The atmosphere turned tense as questions were raised. He listened silently. The mission involved someone dangerous with deep grudges tied to a powerful magic house. The client wanted revenge, their life destroyed by a despicable mage who brought them to ruin. Images of the target were shown. Shadows of rage, betrayal, and fear shaped the client's broken past. Rude read the request carefully. Many layers of pain and revenge twisted beneath its seemingly simple words. The target, a seasoned mage named Dan Marcel, had a long and dangerous history behind him. His reputation alone made the mission difficult, which is why the task was handed to Rude. Rude confirmed the rules: no killing. Assassination wasn't allowed, even for someone like this man. Instead, he was instructed to observe. His real role was to wait for the right moment. With the auction drawing powerful attendees, Rude would watch for threats hidden among collectors, spies, or enemies. Rude was instructed to locate the target mage among hundreds, blending unnoticed within the crowded auction. He listened carefully as the mission's next step involved detaining the man without attracting public attention. Unexpectedly, the superior's expression shifted, revealing a strange twist in the plan that caught Rude off guard. Rude stood frozen, overwhelmed by confusion, as the mission's odd requirement forced him to reconsider its seriousness. Though surprised, Rude was reminded there'd be no violence, only a bizarre, embarrassing act of humiliation. Rude reacted with visible frustration, struggling to understand how revealing someone's underwear counted as meaningful revenge. Before he could protest further, he was told the true reasoning behind the client's strange request. The target was suspected to be part of Cult, a criminal organization thought long disbanded. The auction house planned to expose Cult. Anyone bearing the group's cursed crest would be identified. If the crest was revealed publicly on his body, it would confirm his allegiance and disgrace. Rude remained quiet, processing the strange but strategic mission he'd reluctantly agreed to carry out. He voiced his doubts. If the crest wasn't there, the humiliation would still cause serious backlash. His superior insisted it would still serve as public revenge, regardless of whether the crest appeared. Frustrated, Rude gave in. With no better plan, he prepared himself to see it through. Snapped back to the present, he stood alert. A friend noticed and quietly asked if he's okay. The stone statue seemed to mock the room's tension, its expression oddly fitting the chaotic atmosphere. A lively, noble girl leaned forward with excitement, overwhelmed by the size and energy of the crowd. Her formal escort reminded her of their purpose, trying to contain her enthusiasm during the public event. She responded eagerly, insisting they were there to observe, though clearly seeking more than simple observation. From their balcony seat, they overlooked the arena below, awaiting the drama they knew was inevitable. As the noble group settled in, one of them called out urgently, noticing someone had wandered. Tessiana, standing quietly by the wall, seemed detached. Her slow response revealed she had dozed off. The group's reaction was mixed concern, mild panic, and resignation to her sleepy behavior in public. Elsewhere, a young man named Lapis held his goblet mid-sip, alerted by someone suddenly calling his name. Startled, Lapis straightened his posture as an elder instructed him to stay alert and observe carefully. From a high seat, a nobleman observed the gathering crowd, predicting spectacle as tension filled the air. He clenched his fist with anticipation, sensing hidden motives among the countless powerful mages below. Beside him, a younger noble acknowledged the moment solemnly, calling the older man father with quiet respect. As their conversation ended, a soft green feather floated gently through the air, unnoticed by the crowd. The feather drifted slowly downward, untouched, delicate as if signaling calm before a storm would begin. A young noble addressed his red-haired partner firmly, reminding him of their duty to protect today's artifact. They were assigned to guard the magic stone, not tamper with it or cause a scene. Despite the seriousness, the red-haired mage ignored him, distracted, speaking cryptic phrases under his breath without explanation. The first noble grew frustrated, realizing his partner was completely unfocused, his strange mood complicating their critical task. Resigned and visibly irritated, he sighed deeply, unsure how he'd manage the mission with such an unstable teammate. The red-haired mage snapped back with cold defiance, silencing his partner's orders with sharp, disrespectful words. He crushed the floating feather between his fingers, ignoring the rising tension that his actions provoked. The broken feather drifted to the ground, its pieces scattered by the slow movement of air. Still silent, the red-haired mage glanced down, his expression darkening as his thoughts shifted toward something unseen. With sudden force, his foot stomped the ground, leaves scattering, signaling that things were about to escalate. The red-haired mage smirked with rising intensity, fire-like energy starting to surge from beneath his feet. He whispered a single word, "Coming," as if answering an unseen force no one else sensed. Flames swirled behind him while he stepped forward, ignoring everyone as if drawn to something inevitable ahead. Meanwhile, on stage, a formal presenter announced the winning bidder of a precious, highly sought-after necklace. With the crowd attentive, he smiled and declared that the auction's main event would now begin. The announcer warned the crowd the item revealed next was incredibly rare, valuable, and highly sought after. Nobles leaned forward with anticipation as guards rolled out a glowing artifact sealed in a golden case. Gasps followed as the crowd heard its name, Shazan's Heart, the most powerful magic stone known. Its radiant light illuminated the auction floor, drawing admiration and awe from every mage and noble present. The presenter raised his voice, urging everyone to bid. This moment was rare, their only opportunity. Saya asked Rude quietly if he had located their target among the crowded magical auction attendees. Rude glanced ahead but admitted his vision was obstructed, the energy signatures overlapping throughout the hall. Though unsure, he rejected her hopeful excuses, insisting the target was likely already present and hiding. Realizing time was running short, Saya shifted her demeanor and calmly prepared herself for what's next. She stepped toward the curtain with silent resolve, ready to act if the situation demanded it. A sudden force surged through Rude's body as an unseen voice called out to awaken him. Blue light spiraled upward as Rude's form shimmered, his body responding to the command deep within. The mysterious voice declared his name, Blow, as dark energy radiated from beneath his cloak. Shadows erupted around him, his awakening complete. Magic surged like a storm trapped in human shape. Hidden behind the curtain, Saya watched calmly, impressed by his rare ability to fully shift appearance. Rude's transformation completed. His youthful frame faded, replaced by a taller, confident figure with piercing blue eyes. She stood in awe, unable to believe the small, quiet boy could possess such incredible power. Light surrounded him as his childish form shifted, revealing a taller, graceful figure with sharp determination. Magic swirled around his cloak, his appearance fully changed, his face now calm and unreadably focused. Behind him, the girl approached hesitantly, while he remained still, sensing something beyond the quiet room. He turned toward the window, his eyes cold and alert, recognizing the threat approaching without hesitation. A blinding explosion shattered the ceiling above, sending golden debris raining violently across the entire hall. The girl flinched in shock, while the cloaked boy stayed calm, quietly observing the destruction around them. Soldiers stormed forward, faces tense, weapons drawn, shouting to force the stunned crowd out of their way. A grinning man pushed through the ranks, his sword raised, laughing wildly at the chaotic scene. His eyes locked onto the falling object, his target, the legendary magic stone glowing with immense power. The two men grinned confidently as one revealed the glowing magic stone nestled in his open palm. Together, they declared the stone was theirs, standing boldly while their forces secured the grand hall. Hidden in the crowd, the girl whispered nervously, watching their power unfold with growing unease. Soldiers surrounded the invaders, demanding surrender, weapons drawn as tension rippled through the already shattered room. Smirking, the green-haired man refused to yield, declaring no one in the world could stop them now. Bursting with fury, the blue-cloaked man unleashed a massive wave of purple energy toward the soldiers. The impact was instant. Guards staggered backward, overwhelmed by the force and sheer speed of the attack. Shouts and grunts filled the air as magic clashed with steel. shaking the foundation of the hall. One soldier tried to raise a shield, but a golden strike shattered his stance and defenses completely. Magical rings spun rapidly across the battlefield, signaling the beginning of an even greater surge of power. Amid the wreckage, the long-haired man calmly stepped forward, eyes narrowed, weapons still clutched in hand. He surveyed the battlefield, scattered with defeated soldiers, showing no fear or hesitation in his stride. Growing impatient, he mocked the defenders, declaring the fight too dull to hold his interest. Laughing, he knelt beside the fallen, showing no sympathy as he reached for the glowing prize. Without waiting, he extended his hand, aiming to claim the powerful magic stone for himself. Just as the thief reached out, an unknown figure appeared behind him, gaze locked on the stone. The green-haired man turned, confused and irritated, asking the stranger's identity with growing unease. A sudden flash erupted, his arm was struck fiercely, sending him screaming and stumbling backward in agony. He clutched the injury, recognizing the robe's mark and shouting, realizing the attacker was a mage. Observers whispered in shock, questioning if he was truly from the association, confused by his beast-like features. The crowd murmured as some recalled a famous mage from the association with beast-like traits. One man remembered clearly he was called the association's loyal dog, assigned to enforce their will. The cloaked mage stepped forward, revealing his wolf ears, standing proudly in formal association uniform. Offended by the nickname, he shouted in anger, demanding to know who dared call him that. Watching him rage, the long-haired enemy cursed under his breath, frustrated by the sudden interference. Enraged, the long-haired man launched a furious, magical assault, golden energy tearing across the air toward his foe. The beast-eared mage braced himself, countering the attack mid-air while debris and power burst around him violently. Landing gracefully, he remained composed, staring coldly as the chaos faded and silence returned to the hall. The two attackers looked on with tense expressions, realizing something unexpected had shifted in the mage's stance. Calmly approaching, the mage turned his head and addressed someone unseen nearby. "Hey, brother." His voice darkened as flames swirled around him, smiling. He muttered that the attack actually hurt. The two enemies froze in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the sheer pressure and intensity of his aura. Elsewhere, the girl looked down, puzzled by the weak resistance shown by the surrounding soldiers. She reflected aloud that many present were useless decorations, yet a true association mage was unexpected. Standing beside her, a cloaked figure whispered her name, as if preparing to enter the stage. The girl was startled as she realized the cloaked mage matched someone from a past incident. She glanced at her companion, suspicion rising, wondering if he was more than he appeared. The wolf-eared mage stood calmly, issuing a warning to the gathering mages surrounding the auction hall. He declared that reckless actions would be met with consequences if they disrupted the event. Firmly, he stated anyone interfering again would personally answer to him, ending with a chilling final glance. Chaos erupted as someone shouted the magic stone had vanished from the pedestal without a trace. Eyes darted around the hall until someone pointed upward at a mysterious figure standing on a bird. The red-haired intruder stood confidently, cloaked in blue, ignoring the angry shouting below as he raised the stone. He declared he could feel the presence, his senses confirming that someone specific was hiding among the crowd. His expression hardened. There was no doubt in his voice. "He's definitely here." The crowd looked on in shock. The red-haired figure stood atop the bird, drawing all attention with a bold, commanding presence. He raised the glowing stone, daring his hidden target to reveal themselves through raw intimidation. His expression turned threatening, energy crackling around him, warning that he would destroy the prize if challenged. The audience watched nervously, murmuring in confusion, their eyes shifting between the stage and the cloaked figures. One girl stared at the boy beside her, slowly connecting the dots, suspecting his true identity. Sitting near the balcony, the girl glanced at her companion, uneasy about the rising tension in the hall. He stood firmly, eyes fixed ahead, dismissing the chaos below as insignificant compared to his true goal. She watched him closely, realizing the term dust referred to the powerful enemy holding the magic stone. Resigned, she looked away with a sigh, knowing she had no chance of stopping him anymore. Elsewhere, nobles began losing interest. One admitted Shikmun's presence had ruined his desire to pursue the artifact. Among the guests, some debated teaming up, thinking sheer numbers could overpower the magic stone thief. Others quickly dismissed the idea, recognizing Shikmun as a high-level mage none dared confront lightly. One woman reminded them he'd recently survived a battle against an even more feared black mage. While uncertainty spread, Shikmun stood tall above the crowd, glowing light at his feet, calm and unshaken. A faint smile curved his lips as he quietly confirmed their fears. He knew exactly what he'd done. Shikmun smiled confidently, mocking the idea that his enemy would be afraid or hesitant to face him. Ignoring orders to retreat, he remained high above, teasingly suggesting they turn the situation into a game. His opponent, perched on the bird, remained calm, dismissing the tension and preparing to leave the stage. Suddenly, a powerful surge of energy split the air, drawing sharp glares from both sides. Lightning-like magic cracked across the floor, signaling the long-awaited response, one strong enough to silence the entire room. A colossal surge of magic formed a glowing blue fist, crashing down with unstoppable force and precision. Onlookers flinched, shielding themselves as shockwaves erupted across the hall, sending dust and wind in all directions. Shikmun leapt back midair, eyes narrowed, startled by the sheer scale of the unexpected magical assault. The energy strike smashed into the floor, splintering tiles and shaking the ground with deafening impact. From the smoke and fractured stone, something or someone began to stir beneath the weight of that blow. From the fading mist, a woman stepped forward calm, radiant, and surrounded by an aura of power. All eyes turned as she approached the battlefield, her presence composed despite the destruction surrounding her. She announced herself plainly, claiming her right to join the auction like everyone else. Holding up a single silver coin, she calmly declared she had met the entry requirement. Watching from afar, Shikmun narrowed his eyes, wondering what power she hid behind such a humble gesture. Shikmun landed and glared across the ruined arena, accusing the blue-haired woman of disrupting the auction. She remained unfazed, calmly turning his words back on him, asserting he was the one causing chaos. Tension mounted as the two locked eyes, energy simmering between them like a storm about to explode. From the balcony, the girl watched quietly, surprised by the sudden appearance of a powerful new ally. Realizing the standoff might buy them time, she smiled slightly. This was the opening they desperately needed. The girl's expression sharpened, finally committing herself to action as the opportunity continued to unfold. She addressed the cloaked boy, confirming his identity as Blow, the powerful mage in disguise. He answered simply, no hesitation in his tone, acknowledging who he was without hiding anymore. Her focus shifted toward the crowd below, asking him directly if their real target was present. Blow's gaze settled on a man with long, dark hair, silently confirming that their target had appeared. Blow narrowed his eyes, a faint smirk forming as he confirmed he had located the target. The sky trembled as a heavy silence loomed, just before the eruption shattered the frozen battlefield. A deafening burst exploded from the ground, throwing debris and snow in all directions without warning. Through the swirling chaos, a blue-haired warrior surged forward, magic flaring wildly with each powerful strike launched. The red-haired swordsman turned swiftly, boots skidding, cloak whipping, as he prepared to block the sudden charge. Steel flashed midair, both fighters clashed with force, their powers shaking the ground beneath as energy flared violently. Dark energy surged across his body as he was struck, sparks flaring from the overwhelming magical impact. The blue-haired warrior twisted midair, lunging again with fierce speed, locking blades as power surged between them. Their eyes met hers steady and intense, his narrowed with focus as the battlefield momentarily froze in tension. A hostile aura radiated from him, magic swirling violently, his expression hardening with growing fury and disdain. Exploding with red energy, he advanced mercilessly, overwhelming the field as chaos and flames erupted around them both. A swirling vortex of red magic engulfed the attacker, distorting space as his energy spiraled upward violently. The girl was caught midair, dragged helplessly into the core of the blast by overwhelming force. A brilliant eruption followed, light, flame, and debris bursting outward in all directions, shaking the entire battlefield. From afar, bystanders froze, shielding themselves as the shockwave swept over the landscape with terrifying destructive speed. Smoke swallowed everything, the battlefield now cloaked in silence, with only one distant figure barely standing amid ruin. Amid thick smoke, a lone figure emerged holding a sword, radiating an eerie calm and hidden strength. A glowing speech ring formed its magic, activated a long-dormant force buried deep within the frozen battlefield. The red-haired man watched motionlessly as blue energy began to ripple and distort the surrounding air. Her pendant shone brightly, threads of energy wrapping around her body while she knelt, gripping the sword. A massive surge burst outward, wind howled. Power rose skyward, while he stood unmoved within the swirling storm. Bathed in glowing blue light, she rose fully awakened, her aura sharp, stable, and brimming with power. With eyes locked on her opponent, she launched forward, breaking the ground beneath her with raw force. Winds howled in her wake as her magic pulse scattered debris and cracked the frozen air. Distant spectators watched in awe, stunned by her control and presence as the battle intensified before them. One advisor urged retreat, sensing danger. Another quietly observed, analyzing her awakening with measured interest and caution. The guard gently stepped forward, shielding the child, aware the smallest mistake could cost them everything. With composed eyes, he turned away from the tension, urging his group to retreat before chaos escalated. Below, soldiers burst into motion as panic spread through the courtyard, orders lost under the roaring wind. In the crowd, academy instructors shouted urgently, pushing students back while magic stones blinked with ominous energy. Confusion thickened. A girl cried out, pointing something was missing, something dangerous had been taken unnoticed. A furious voice cut through the noise as a nobleman shoved others aside, eyes wide with urgency. He scanned the floor with clenched fists, knowing the magical stone's disappearance could ignite dangerous consequences. His breath caught. Among the shifting crowd, he glimpsed a lone figure calmly slipping toward the edge. Hidden in a cloak, the figure observed silently, unnoticed, untouched, and deliberately avoiding the growing commotion. With attention drawn elsewhere, the hooded figure knew now was the perfect moment to vanish unseen. Among the swirling crowd, the cloaked figure hesitated, wondering how to expose the crest without suspicion. He narrowed his eyes, still bothered by the earlier observation, the man's leg. There had to be proof. Nearby shouts grew louder. Someone screamed about the magic stone, tension crackling like lightning through the air. Without flinching, the cloaked boy stepped forward and calmly addressed a startled nobleman with a quiet voice. Pointing discreetly, he whispered a lie, accusing the man in purple of hiding the missing artifact. A nearby noble pointed in confusion, trying to recall if the laughing man had acted suspiciously earlier. The cloaked boy's lie took root. His false target was now the center of public suspicion. Guards shouted as they surged forward, demanding answers, prompting the man to panic under the scrutiny. Hidden from view, the cloaked figure blinked in disbelief, surprised how easily the distraction had succeeded. Cries erupted as the crowd turned violent. The accused man screamed in pain, struck before he could speak. Enraged, the accused man drew his sword, demanding to know how his secret had been uncovered. The cloaked boy offered no reply, letting the silence mock the man's unraveling composure and growing panic. Magic flared his aura, twisted violently as he tried to escape, using brute force to mask his fear. The crowd scattered as his power surged. He roared his name, casting illusions to obscure his retreat. Eyes wild, he called them insects, vowing vengeance while dark energy pulsed with poisonous promise from his hands. With a cry of fury, the sorcerer declared all witnesses would fall by his cursed magic. Dark orbs launched violently toward the gathered crowd, each pulsing with concentrated hatred and lethal energy. Just as the magic neared impact, a black blur intercepted, severing the assault with graceful precision. The cloaked figure emerged midair, striking with such speed that even the sorcerer flinched in shock. Pain twisted the sorcerer's face. He hadn't even seen the counterattack before blood trailed from his shoulder. The force of the strike sent the sorcerer stumbling, his weapon slipping from trembling fingers midair. With flawless control, the cloaked swordsman advanced, blade raised, cutting through magic like paper in the wind. His cold voice pierced the battlefield, rejecting the enemy's escape with calm certainty and unshaken resolve. Mid-duel, his coat flared, magic gathering, eyes unwavering. He prepared to finish what the enemy had started. From afar, a red-haired observer narrowed his gaze, silently analyzing the sudden shift in battle momentum. The red-haired noble released a surge of concentrated energy, icy light cracking from his arm toward target. He charged with precision, feet shattering stone beneath him, cloak whipping as raw force carved through space. The purple sorcerer was thrown aside violently, body tumbling mid-air from the devastating blue-bladed counterstrike. Silence followed as dust settled around the black-cloaked figure, who now stood motionless at the center. Crowds recoiled in stunned recognition, staring at the lone magician whose aura exuded unmatched and overwhelming pressure. Rising from the shattered plaza, the black-cloaked youth stood tall, calm amidst the crumbling magical aftermath. The wounded sorcerer reached out desperately, energy sparking around him as he lunged to reclaim the stone. But the young mage stood firm, eyes cold, his presence alone enough to halt further advance. Before another word could finish, red energy flared suddenly, magic detonated behind him, casting the scene in tension. From afar, a nobleman's eyes widened in disbelief, recognizing the youth who just halted the chaos alone. A massive red magic circle erupted, swirling with chaos as an overwhelming power began to take shape. Shouts echoed as those nearby instinctively backed away, sensing the destructive spell rapidly spiraling out of control. A burning projectile shot through the air, sharp, fast, and unexpected. It wasn't magic. It was a sword. The red-cloaked attacker descended with measured grace, landing amidst the energy storm like a seasoned warrior claiming the stage. His piercing gaze locked forward, blue eyes steady, expression unreadable as his entrance silenced the battlefield completely. The red-haired fighter collided mid-air with explosive force, striking his target with no hesitation or mercy. Amid the burning winds, his face emerged steady, calm as he floated downward through the chaos he caused. Landing firmly, he looked up with familiarity and said one word with certainty, "Blackie." Eyes locked on target. A sharp force struck from behind, sending shockwaves through the air as the man cried out. He barely turned, red light flaring wildly, as his attacker's blade came crashing down without hesitation. Pain surged through his chest. He gasped. His eyes widened as a familiar voice pierced through. "Blackie," she muttered, her gaze burning, violet eyes locked on him with purpose, fury boiling within. The impact exploded beneath them. Debris flew, soldiers scattered. Her wrath shattered the earth without restraint. A violent blast erupted behind the crowd. Screams echoed as people scattered, shielding themselves from flying debris. Smoke and rubble filled the air. A figure was hurled back, crashing into the wreckage without resistance. Blood dotted the cracked ground. The pressure of the impact left the surroundings trembling in eerie silence. The group of onlookers stood frozen, their expressions tense. The sudden destruction left them stunned and speechless. Amid the rubble, she rose slowly, her body ached, her hand clenched where her weapon once was. She stared ahead, eyes steady. Despite pain and loss, her will to fight had only grown stronger. Surrounded by red markings and shattered stone, she stood tall, determination burning in her blue eyes. A figure dashed across the battlefield, his expression tense, cloak fluttering. He sprinted with something clutched tightly. Dark energy swirled around his hand. He held the glowing magic stone, refusing to let it go. Guards gave chase, shouting orders. He kept running through broken terrain, ignoring threats and cries behind him. He tightened his grip, channeling mana. Violet light surged as he prepared a spell inside the barrier. Energy swirled around his body, crackling violently. His shout echoed as the attack burst outward with force. The ground shook. Shockwaves exploded outward. He staggered slightly, but his aura continued radiating destructive power. With a sneer, he scoffed at resistance. His voice rang sharp. Only the strong deserved to stand. A shadow dropped behind him. Cloak fluttering, a new figure arrived, calm, composed, and clearly not weak. A heavy punch landed squarely on his jaw. His spell broke. His body staggered from the blow. From both sides, armed fighters rushed forward. Each one moved with practiced speed, weapons drawn and eyes locked. Additional swordsmen closed in, coordinated and swift. Their formation surrounded the target without hesitation or wasted motion. Inside the hall, chaos spread. Guests scrambled for safety while guards attempted to hold defensive positions. Stunned and bleeding, he gritted his teeth. His glare sharpened as he registered the incoming threat. Energy flared above the hall's ceiling. Guests gasped, eyes drawn upward to the unstable magical disturbance. Someone shouted the Black Mage had appeared. Panic rippled as they realized a clash was beginning. Among the observers, a blonde noble stiffened. Recognition hit him instantly as tension built in his chest. He turned sharply. Cracks spread along the walls. A A single thought struck him: this building wouldn't hold long. His voice faltered. Confused, he looked up from the royal table, startled by the figure beside him. Rune answered calmly. The king had already escaped, leaving the others to face danger on their own. The young noble clenched his jaw. Fear pushed him to flee, but something heavier rooted his feet. The floor trembled beneath him. His heart pounded. A clash between powerful mages had already begun outside. He trembled with excitement. Against logic, he wanted to witness it, the full force of magic. Elsewhere, a noblewoman watched. Her thoughts raced, analyzing the chaos and how it could shift advantageously. From the balcony, the noblewoman observed sharply, questioning the next move as chaos engulfed the hall. A figure landed through flames, black coat swirling. His presence was undeniable. Whispers confirmed it. Blow had arrived. He stood amidst the rubble. Calm and clear-eyed, he prepared to speak over the burning silence. Facing his enemy, he raised no weapon. Instead, he stated plainly this wasn't his fight. His voice remained level. He clarified his mission wasn't the stone, but the auction's corrupt foundation. A noble flinched, surprised by Blow's calm demeanor amid magical chaos spreading across the crumbling hall. Blow kept his gaze steady. He proposed a truce: each would leave quietly and avoid unnecessary conflict. His tone remained firm as he demanded the removal of the glowing red circle above. A crimson lattice pulsed overhead. His opponent stood below it, surrounded by energy, answering with open defiance. The red mage smirked coldly. Whether Blow wanted peace or not didn't matter, he welcomed the fight. The red mage mocked him, recalling how long they'd searched for Blow since the incident years ago. He revealed Orion's orders, magical traps set, and predictions made all prepared for Blow's inevitable return. Despite their efforts, Blow had vanished. No trace, no signature. He had become a ghost in shadows. But now he was here. No escape left. The red mage launched himself, striking with full intent. The two clashed midair, raw power colliding in a burst that rocked the entire battlefield below. The red mage narrowed his eyes, voice low, issuing a challenge that cut through the burning tension. Blow remained silent, gaze steady. No fear, just focus. His eyes gleamed like ice under crimson skies. Darkness flashed in memory. He recalled that lone silhouette standing against impossible odds, radiating overwhelming power and fear. That haunting image returned, etched in shadow. It had burned itself into his spine and never left. Now, beneath a crashing storm of magic, he screamed upward, unleashing everything to summon that fear again. Blow spoke softly, eyes unwavering. He warned the enemy to stop before things reached a fatal point. The words hung in air. A surge of red energy erupted, shaking the ground beneath them. The floor cracked violently. Shockwaves spread outward. Magic symbols shattered as debris exploded in every direction. Panic swept the hall. Screams rose as nobles scattered, ducking under falling stone and magical backlash. Amid the chaos, a figure clenched his fist, golden energy beginning to rise in response. A sharp burst of light exploded on impact. The beastman slammed the ground, shielding nearby nobles. Others noticed his effort. Amid chaos, he stood firm, holding the line with strength and speed. While dust rose and shouts echoed, one onlooker muttered, "He's drawing all the attention, fighting like mad." The beastman gritted his teeth. This wasn't heroism. It was distraction to help others slip away safely. Suddenly, someone shouted in shock. Their eyes widened. An unexpected presence had just re-entered the battlefield from above. The mage stood his ground as several attackers rushed in, demanding the stolen artifact with weapons drawn. Blasts of magic lit the air. Dust rose as soldiers closed in, surrounding him from all sides. He launched himself forward, striking the floor with raw force. Energy exploded, sending bodies flying in every direction. Amid the confusion, one figure pointed and shouted. Eyes followed, scanning him with growing suspicion and urgency. Everyone turned as realization struck. Fingers clenched, movement froze, attention now locked on the source of the glow. Tension built as the cloaked figure guarded the seated girl. Her posture firm, eyes locked ahead. The accused mage stepped back, face tense. Confusion spread through the crowd behind him, some preparing to act. Panic rose. Shouts warned him to stay back. A protective stance formed around the vulnerable girl. Smoke drifted between broken columns. Rubble shifted beneath heavy footsteps as silence fell across the scorched floor. From the dust, the red-haired mage emerged alone, calm, unreadable. watching the others without making a move. From the balcony, smoke billowed outward. The black-haired figure emerged silently, scanning the chaos below him. Two young women turned toward him, startled. The sharp tension in his gaze made them freeze instantly. He stepped forward calmly, raising a hand. His voice remained quiet but firm, urging them to leave. The women hesitated, then backed away slowly as he turned toward the edge, preparing for descent. He muttered with annoyance, crouching low. This conflict wasn't worth his energy, but interference now seemed inevitable. Crouched in the shadows, he reflected. Ever since that day, his missions had felt increasingly abnormal. He scanned the hall. Smoke thickened, guests fled, yet his mind remained fixed on one adversary. Though the objective was vague, failure felt certain. Still, something demanded he confirm this encounter directly. Below, the red-haired mage narrowed his eyes. If words failed, then provocation would draw a response. He surveyed the panicking crowd. Too many distractions soon. He'd clear the field and force engagement. The red-haired mage raised his hand. Magic surged upward, signaling the start of his true assault. A ripple of red light spread across the hall. Cracks formed beneath panicked nobles stumbling backward. Onlookers froze, heads tilted upward. A massive array of glowing sigils began forming above their heads. Energy converged into a blazing geometric core. Its size dwarfed the hall. Confusion turned into dread. From the battlefield, a purple-robed mage narrowed his eyes, unsettled by the sudden rise in pressure. Soldiers gave chase, weapons drawn, ignoring the sky as red light intensified above the trembling ruins. A voice shouted, urging them to look up, but rage blinded them from the incoming danger. The purple-robed mage grinned. Despite exhaustion, he prepared one more shot, hoping to land it cleanly. He launched downward, magic crackling. The explosion flung attackers back just as Black Boots stepped forward. Blow spoke calmly, gaze fixed. His warning was clear: step aside or be caught in devastation. Blow surveyed the surroundings calmly. Cracks were forming fast. The building couldn't withstand much longer. Above him, the enormous red magic array pulsed violently. Its pressure pushed the ceiling closer to collapse. An enormous red magic formation flared to life, shaking the structure as its energy spiraled out violently. Rude advanced alone through the crumbling corridor, his cloak trailing behind as red light engulfed the surroundings. A boy ran up in alarm, pointing at the seal, his voice drowned by roaring magical pressure. Rude kept silent, eyes narrowed, assessing the unstable formation while the walls cracked and fire licked upward. Far above, a girl lounged with a cup in hand, watching the destruction unfold without a care. She walked briskly through the upper hall, determined to locate Blow before destruction consumed the entire building. Pausing abruptly, she scanned the air. There was a strange imbalance that made her skin crawl uncomfortably. The smoke parted to reveal a lone figure ahead, unsettling her with an unexplainable sense of dread. A woman stood trembling, blaming herself for underestimating Blow's ambition and the chaos now overtaking the school. The boy stared forward, confused, as she accused him of plotting while the others risked their lives. A sharp gaze narrowed as he observed the cloaked figure, sensing something suspicious behind his movements. He questioned the man directly. Was he connected to Kotal, the shadowy group plaguing Raiden's peace? The man flinched, startled by the accusation, then barked denial while nervously shifting his injured posture. But the truth leaked through his panic. A known bounty couldn't be hidden with flimsy excuses anymore. Watching him unravel, the boy confirmed it silently: this man was guilty, and now proof would follow. Cornered and trembling, the cloaked man panicked as dark energy surged closer, breaking his composure instantly. Clutching his chest, he screamed about the magic stone, his only bargaining chip to escape alive now. He held it out with shaking hands, eyes wide, offering the precious item without further resistance. The boy calmly observed, confirming the object's authenticity, knowing the man couldn't fake such powerful resonance. Before more words could be spoken, an explosion of force erupted, bright, violent, and impossible to dodge. He stood amid the fading shockwave, staring calmly, unmoved by destruction or the magic stone's temptation. Across the rubble, a new opponent emerged with sharp words and sharper intent, stepping into view confidently. Mocking the chaos, he asked if fighting weaklings like that really satisfied someone of Rude's caliber. The atmosphere shifted as the two locked eyes, tension thick, each measuring the other without flinching. Rude lowered his gaze slightly, tone neutral. suggesting they speak first before letting their powers settle the outcome. Before the conversation could continue, a violent strike shattered the ground, forcing immediate evasive reactions. Rude dodged swiftly, but the explosion's shockwave still pushed him back, scattering debris in all directions. He raised a hand to block incoming rubble. Frowning negotiation had clearly failed before it even began. His opponent lunged forward, desperate to speak, but the boy had already charged with ruthless precision. Their clash erupted in another burst of energy, red light surging wildly as the battlefield cracked open. With a grin, the red-haired man taunted Rude, challenging him to focus solely on their fight. His aura surged outward, twisting the ground as he demanded Rude's attention with overwhelming magical pressure. From the shadows, a dark figure emerged violently, sending waves of unstable energy crackling through the air. Rude leapt back instantly, instincts flaring this new arrival wasn't ordinary. His presence screamed danger beyond expectations. As reality twisted around them, the two figures ascended into a vortex of shadows and collapsing light. In the rising shadows, two glowing eyes opened. His appearance sent a sharp jolt through Rude's senses. For a moment, everything fell silent. Then mana surged violently before vanishing into an unnatural void. Rude and his opponent flew through the suspended air, grappling for control amid flickering spatial instability. Landing softly, the dark figure stood still, cloaked in calm while the battlefield twisted around him silently. Rude blinked in confusion. His palm open, something was wrong. The ambient mana had completely vanished without trace. One noble tried to grab the red-haired fighter, shouting in frustration as confusion spread across the group. Another turned abruptly, sensing something strange, faint vibrations pulsing from beneath their feet, shaking the broken floor slightly. A massive purple magic circle ignited around them, humming with dense energy that immediately pulled everyone's attention upward. The soldiers stepped back cautiously, realizing the circle wasn't decorative, it was a trap forming beneath their feet. As the ground cracked open, several layered seals activated at once, engulfing the area in pulsing violet light. The glowing purple circles spun faster, drawing attention from all sides as energy rippled across the courtyard. A soldier stammered in disbelief. Why were the circles still growing instead of activating like ordinary barriers? Suddenly, giant crystal pylons burst from the ground, surrounding the area as something massive began emerging below. With a deafening crack, a monstrous entity rose, multiple eyes gleaming, jaws twisted, its presence terrifying even seasoned fighters. Guards scrambled in panic as one screamed, "A creature!" while others shouted warnings toward the young noble nearby. One of the nobles stepped back in shock, demanding answers as panic erupted across the platform. His companion calmly explained the obvious. It had emerged from the summoning array etched into the stone. A desperate cry for help echoed out as injured guards scrambled near the edge of collapse. Clenching his fists, the blonde noble demanded a sword, unsure but unwilling to remain a passive observer. Even with doubt clouding his skill, he stepped forward. Fighting was better than waiting powerlessly for death. As the monster advanced, the blonde noble stepped between them, sword raised, voice steady with forced confidence. He shouted his intent, promising to protect them even if his strength wasn't enough to guarantee survival. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, aura flaring around his blade as magic energy surged beneath his feet. For a moment, his expression hardened, doubt buried beneath duty as he prepared to strike with all he had. Behind him, a scream rang out as one girl was flung into the air by an unseen force. The blonde noble caught the falling girl, breathing heavily, still reeling from the force of the impact. They turned toward the monster still looming, still pulsing, and began debating what exactly it resembled most. "An octopus? A jellyfish?" she muttered, trying to mask her fear with logic and forced curiosity. The creature hovered, motionless, as if waiting for something until its body flashed, surging with sudden violent power. Without warning, it released a devastating pulse of energy, blasting the surroundings in a brilliant violet shockwave. Surrounded by erupting crystals and flashing glyphs, the students struggled to understand the true nature of the threat. One shouted in confusion, were these all summoning circles? Were more monsters about to emerge from beneath? The question lingered heavily. Who could summon such beasts, and why hadn't anyone detected the attempt sooner? Even among powerful mages, summoning creatures of this scale was unheard of, especially in such overwhelming quantity. A quiet boy at the edge stared solemnly, wondering if this breach had always been possible. Miss Ren called out, rushing through the chaos, relieved to find Blow standing upright and alive. Blow turned, surprised by her presence. She had escaped earlier, yet returned despite having no magical defenses. She firmly declared she couldn't abandon others, unwilling to be a bystander while everyone else risked everything. Blow observed her quietly, realizing she wasn't a mage, yet carried herself with remarkable courage under pressure. Suddenly, a massive red explosion flared behind them, another magic surge unleashed by the red-haired caster from before. The red-haired mage looked down, stunned. The magic stone he had just used was suddenly missing. Blow confronted him, confused and tense, demanding to know where the precious object had vanished to. The mage frowned, recalling how it slipped from his hand, but now it was completely gone. His voice dropped flat. No theatrics, no anger. Just a single word spoken sharply disappeared. Ren raised a scroll and called to Blow, insisting they teleport away before chaos swallowed everything whole. Blow paused near the teleport scroll, sensing something, an overwhelming heat surging quickly from behind. From the smoke, the red-haired mage reappeared, flames swirling as he charged without hesitation or warning. A burst of power erupted. Blow turned just in time, intercepting the attack with dark energy. Sparks flew as their weapons collided midair, red and black mana clashing violently in pulsing arcs. Behind them, Ren stared in disbelief, scroll in hand, completely stunned by the sudden explosion of combat. Ren shouted for control, but the clash continued. Blow and the red mage locked in a power struggle. Meanwhile, Shikmun tightened his grip, noticing something off. The flow of mana had suddenly stabilized again. His eyes narrowed, analyzing the sudden shift. Was the earlier disappearance just a timed disruption or something artificial? Red sparks crackled across their weapons, both fighters sensing the same eerie stability settling over the battlefield. In the distance, monstrous creatures approached silently, their presence signaling this battle couldn't afford distraction any longer. Despite sensing something unnatural, the red mage dismissed it, his eyes fixed only on winning this fight. He launched forward recklessly, red energy bursting outward as his attack drove straight into Blow's defense. A massive explosion tore through the battlefield, cracking stone and igniting air in a storm of impact. Ren shielded her face as the shockwave rushed past, her expression frozen between fear and disbelief. Amidst the rising smoke, Shikmun and the other boy stood motionless, eyes widened at what just occurred. Helena stood frozen, crimson energy swirling around her as a masked enemy approached with deadly intent. A sudden gust of power surged through the battlefield. Rude arrived, locking eyes with the masked attacker. He stepped forward with silent authority, his presence alone halting the enemy's advance in an instant. Crimson aura flared around Sheik's body, refusing to back down, despite the danger clearly surrounding him. Helena, steadying herself, assessed the scene, calculating risks, noting reinforcements approaching fast through the haze of destruction. Rude stood silent while his ally hesitated, unsure whether to challenge the powerful force confronting them. With crimson eyes glowing, Rude's warning rang clear, his patience thin, and his resolve absolute in purpose. The other mage flinched, realizing too late who stood before him. Blow, the feared enforcer from Helios. Even Ren recognized the name. Tension spiked as she urged retreat before things escalated out of control. Suddenly, a sharp cry broke her focus. Danger loomed behind her, and she turned with wide eyes. Ren barely reacted as a voice shouted. An ominous wave of energy surged fast from behind her. A magical blast struck down with force, the air trembling as stone cracked beneath the collision's impact. From the shadows emerged a grotesque beast, dozens of red eyes gleaming, razor teeth clacking with unholy noise. Gasps followed as a nearby noble dashed in, shielding Ren with magic, voice shaking from raw concern. Ren stared, dazed and shaken, her hand trembling as she realized how close she came to death. The monstrous creature lunged with a roar, forcing the young noble to stumble backward in terror. Ren stepped forward instinctively, but panic gripped her. She wasn't prepared to face something this deadly alone. A calm voice interrupted as a white-haired mage appeared, casually offering help despite the chaos unfolding. Before a reply came, brilliant energy carved through the beast's face, silencing its scream mid-attack. Smoke cleared as a familiar figure landed nearby, blade drawn, asking gently if Ren was unharmed. Rude silently assessed the aftermath, realizing the threat surpassed normal logic. Something darker was at play here. He narrowed his eyes, questioning who could summon such chaos without warning, purpose, or recognizable magic signature. Meanwhile, allies regrouped, tending to the fallen noble as calm settled briefly over the battlefield's edge. Whispers spread quickly. One side had the Black Mage, the other, the fearsome warrior known as Shikmuan. The young noble watched. Stunned, two legendary forces had clashed here, and both carried terrifying strength without restraint. Rude's gaze fell to the ground, locking onto the mysterious figure now unconscious among the rubble. No movement, no sound. Yet something about the stillness left Rude uneasy, instinct warning him it wasn't over. He approached cautiously, withholding judgment, uncertain if the danger had truly passed or merely shifted form. Behind him, Ren raised her voice, clearly shaken frustration boiling after a sleepless night and stressful encounter. Holding a glowing artifact, she sighed in relief, grateful her magical token hadn't been left behind. Rude calmly instructed Ren to retreat, sensing more danger ahead despite the brief moment of peace. Ren misinterpreted his intent, reacting loudly, sparking confusion and embarrassed whispers from nearby bystanders who overheard. Rude clarified quickly, noting lingering monsters and civilians at risk, not some odd personal motive. Ren hesitated, suggesting the tower could handle it, unaware of how unstable the situation still was. Suddenly, the noble addressed them, offering a teleport scroll, willing to help them escape before worse arrived. The noble offered to escape together, his voice steady, hoping to share safety with the others. Ren flustered instantly, misreading his offer again, while he clarified that her presence would simply be appreciated. Meanwhile, Shik leaned back with a groan, the chaos leaving his thoughts in total disarray. He barely had time to complain when someone suddenly grabbed him, fists flying with frustrated fury. Shik's head jerked sideways from the impact, stunned as the blow landed hard across his face. The scroll activated, light swirling upward, waiting for those in contact to trigger the teleportation destination. Rude instructed the others to grab hold quickly. Escape would only work if they stayed in contact. The noble hesitated, but nodded, understanding the urgency behind Rude's calm but direct command. Meanwhile, Shik watched from a distance, frowning as frustration built with every second they fled. He growled, mocking the disappearing group, challenging the bravado of someone who once dared to stand proud. The noble nervously glanced at Rude, unsettled by the hostile pressure radiating from Sheik nearby. Sheik hurled insults from afar, growing agitated as he felt ignored and mocked by their retreat. Rude calmly reassured Ren, needing silence to concentrate while he managed the spell's activation and precision. But Ren, worried, interrupted, torn between concern for Rude and fear of what Shik might attempt. As tension spiked, Shik screamed in rage, red magic cracking through the air, disturbing the entire battlefield. Sheik shouted in frustration, eyes darting around. He couldn't make sense of what was unfolding anymore. The noble looked up, recognizing the spell pattern as something connected to earlier events and energy traces. Rude's voice called out urgently as Ren stood still, her attention drifting toward her own thoughts. Eyes closed, Ren breathed slowly, lips forming words not from panic, but from a personal resolve awakening. Blue magic sparked around her fingertips as she whispered softly, "What I wish," beginning the invocation. A burst of light engulfed the group as the spell completed Ren's will, guiding the destination. The command echoed, "Teleport!" just before everything vanished in a flash of blinding blue and white magic. Far away, fire consumed the city's edge as the night sky reflected its terrible orange glow. Hidden among trees, someone watched the blaze quietly, saying nothing as flames danced wildly in the distance. A hand extended, conjuring magical symbols. Purple energy crackled faintly as another spell began forming in secret. A mysterious figure with glowing eyes observed the chaos, a sly grin forming on his face. He spoke softly to the darkness, amused by the unexpected interference unfolding in front of him. Golden energy sparked in his palm, illuminating the forest canopy as his partner caught the artifact. Perched silently, she closed her book, catching the magic orb mid-air with practiced ease and disinterest. She scoffed coldly, yellow eyes narrowing. "Interesting, my ass." Unimpressed by what had just transpired below, she examined the artifact closely, unimpressed. To her, this object didn't justify the chaos below. The orb pulsed faintly in her hand, but she remained seated calm, unshaken by its hidden power. With a quiet sigh, she muttered her judgment. humans driven by greed, were hopelessly small-minded creatures. He examined the report. A building destroyed, a rare magic stone missing, and strange traces found. Flipping the page, he noted the appearance of an unidentified creature, escalating the severity of the incident. With sparkling eyes and dramatic flair, he laughed, marveling at the chaos described like a theater show. His laughter faded as his classmates silently stared, unimpressed by his excitement over such serious matters. She reminded him their original goal was simple undress, the guy not spark magical disasters across school grounds. She expresses cautious relief about his safe return, though tension lingers after everything that went terribly wrong. He reassures her with a light answer, masking his concern and confusion over what truly happened. Reflecting alone, he analyzes the enemy's strange behavior, far too aggressive, almost personal, directed solely at blow. A memory surfaces of the attacker's background, an unstable noble family known for their erratic, dangerous heirs. She listens quietly, unsettled by the implications, beginning to suspect something far worse than a simple grudge. They discussed the attacker's silence, aware that waiting too long might only delay something far more dangerous. He noted how the attacker fled right after seeing Blow, as if triggered by his very presence. Thinking deeper, he recalled the bizarre creature's appearance, which didn't match any known summoned beast or magic. She agreed, though still unsure what it meant. The incident felt too coordinated to be coincidence. He stared at the failed report. Frustrated, despite everything learned, they were still missing the bigger picture. Someone wondered aloud where Rude had gone, his absence finally noticed in the quiet, busy room. Rude sat alone, deep in thought, researching magical symbols and ancient events connected to the strange attack. He sifted through references, trying to match clues from the fight with forbidden magic once considered extinct. A cheerful voice broke his focus. Ben arrived with a drink and a warm, unexpected greeting. Ben asked about the mountain of books. Rude replied calmly, hiding the real weight behind his curiosity. Ben struggled to make sense of the complex magic diagrams, frustrated by their strange symbols and structure. Rude, calm and experienced, easily followed the content, flipping pages while Ben stared in confused admiration. The room was unusually full. Students gathered in groups, whispering anxiously about recent magical events and rumors. Rude noticed the shift in atmosphere. Everyone seemed fixated on one subject: the mysterious Black Mage's return. Ben was startled by the mention of power, finally realizing the rumors had reached even casual circles. Ben excitedly retold a rumor about a sacred relic, protected until villains tried to steal its power. He described how the Black Mage suddenly appeared, defeating the intruders and saving everyone with overwhelming strength. Rude froze as Ben praised the hero, unaware he might be speaking to the actual Black Mage. Ben smiled brightly, sharing that his sister dreamed of becoming strong just like the mysterious, powerful Black Mage. When Rude asked, Ben proudly revealed his sister had just enrolled in Helios, the kingdom's elite magic school. Helios stood tall in the sunlight, a prestigious academy where only the most exceptional magic users were accepted. Ben admitted he missed his sister but accepted it, proud she earned a place among the elite. Rude listened quietly as Ben spoke cheerfully, his words simple but filled with genuine care and admiration. Suddenly, Ben jumped up, needing to leave, reminding Rude to study hard before running off energetically. Left alone, Rude sipped his drink in silence, while others nearby chatted, unaware of his deeper thoughts. Rude sat silently, deep in thought, his expression unreadable as the noise around him slowly faded out. He lowered his gaze, hiding the weight of secrets and uncertainty gnawing quietly beneath his calm demeanor. Around him, the room blurred conversations carried on, oblivious to the internal storm brewing in his mind. Whispers floated from nearby tables, speculation about the explosion, magic stone theft, and the Black Mage's identity. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the Black Mage was a woman. Others blamed cloaked strangers or sabotage. Rude overheard the growing rumors, realizing people were already twisting facts and blaming the tower's personnel. He reviewed a report, noting the creature's absence in the official record. It didn't add up. Suspicion crept in. Was the tower hiding something, or was their barrier system flawed in some way? He rejected that idea. If it were true, the tower wouldn't be staying so eerily silent now. Rude studied his sketch of the magic circle, uncertain if the drawing alone could reveal the truth. Rude sat quietly, his mind racing with possibilities none clear, but all pointing toward deeper conspiracies. He made a decision to seek guidance from his master, the one person he truly trusted. Far away, a peaceful city basked under the morning sun, unaware of the storm silently approaching. A hooded rider named Lizen traveled cautiously, sensing shifts in energy and preparing for an encounter. He noticed a convoy ahead, his instincts sharp. Something about the approaching presence felt unusually heavy with purpose. Lizen addressed Lady Daner with concern, questioning her safety before she left the carriage for her task. Daner dismissed his worry, calmly asserting that she'd handle anything if it meant helping the person she admired. She resolved quietly to support him, regardless of the danger, willing to act without hesitation or fear. Elsewhere, Rude wandered the city with papers in hand, still troubled by everything unfolding too quickly. He paused in thought. Unsure of what to believe anymore, every answer only led to more questions. A strong gust suddenly lifted Rude's important sketch into the air, tearing it from his grip. The wind carried the paper high above the street, swirling between startled pedestrians and busy travelers below. Rude immediately gave chase, his eyes locked on the sketch as it fluttered just out of reach. The paper danced upward through narrow alleys and wide streets, far beyond where Rude could easily follow. From above, the sketch drifted over the marketplace, its destination uncertain, its loss potentially catastrophic for Rude. A frightened boy begged for his paper's return, cornered by older students who clearly enjoyed the intimidation. The group blocked his way, casually mocking him while one smugly claimed he just found trash. Desperate, the boy protested the paper wasn't garbage, and it held something too important to let go. The bully grabbed him by the collar, threatening further humiliation, clearly enjoying the power over someone weaker. Holding the stolen sketch mockingly, he warned the boy cooperate, or risk greater trouble when the guards arrive. As the bully inspected the sketch, someone suddenly struck, knocking him back and disrupting the group's control. The bag fell to the ground, dirty and torn, while the bully looked irritated but unaware who interfered. Mocking the situation, he picked up the sketch again, acting superior while the boy watched in fear. Confused, the bullies noticed the bag was missing. Their attention turned toward a mysterious figure in the crowd. The timid boy received his bag from Rude, surprised and grateful, unsure how it was recovered unnoticed. Rude calmly asked the bully to return the paper, pretending innocence while subtly regaining control of things. The nervous boy ran off, while the bullies grew irritated, realizing someone had just interfered with authority. Eyes glowing with malice, the leader vowed to teach Rude a lesson for interrupting their dominance. They moved to block his path, surrounding him with smug confidence and no idea who they faced. Rude observed their arrogance silently, wondering if they were simply reckless or had ties to upper-ranked nobles. The arrogant bully cracked his knuckles, smugly offering to educate Rude as if he were a child. Rude stayed calm, weighing his options. He didn't want to escalate anything unless absolutely necessary for now. He made his decision in a flash. He'd avoid the scene entirely and simply walk away. Before anyone could react, Rude sprinted off, catching the bullies off guard with his sudden exit strategy. Confused shouts followed behind as he vanished from their reach, moving faster than they anticipated or understood. Rude launched himself across rooftops with incredible speed, easily evading pursuit and surprising everyone on the ground. Below, a moving carriage rolled forward through the street, its occupants unaware of the figure descending above. Rude flipped through the air, landing with perfect precision on the roof of the fast-moving vehicle. His eyes locked briefly with Lizen's, both recognizing each other instantly despite the sudden and silent encounter. Inside the carriage, Lady Daner sensed something land above her, stiffening as tension filled the air. Lady Daner narrowed her eyes, sensing a sudden shift in pressure above. Something had landed without warning. A magic portal opened suddenly, and a strange presence startled the elegantly dressed woman in black. She glanced toward the distortion, her eyes narrowing as a familiar but unwelcome aura filled the room. It was unmistakable. Someone from her past had returned, and it disrupted her carefully hidden plans. Far away, students at the academy sensed something odd. Conversations paused as tension rippled through the air. The boy flinched and instinctively touched his chest. He felt it too. Something dangerous was heading their way. The carriage arrived at the academy gates, drawing everyone's attention as silence swept across the grounds. He stood quietly, unsure why this carriage gave him a strange sense of dread and familiarity. Feigning calm, he muttered awkwardly about the carriage's sturdiness, trying to distract from his discomfort. Suddenly, the carriage door burst open with force, startling nearby guards and rattling the air. Without hesitation, the boy turned and sprinted away. Heart pounding, he knew he couldn't face what awaited. The guards reacted in shock as the boy's sudden dash disrupted the strict order of arrival. Without hesitation, he leapt past the soldiers, weaving through them before they could draw their weapons. A commanding figure swiftly moved to intercept, his sharp eyes locking onto the fleeing boy's back. The boy glanced over his shoulder, realizing pursuit had already begun and closing in fast. A heavily armored knight stepped forward, calm but stern, recognizing the boy's offense as a serious breach. The boy stopped, cornered by the armored knight, who calmly but firmly blocked his path forward. Realizing the situation, the boy lowered his head, shoulders trembling as guilt and tension overtook his expression. He bowed deeply, offering a full apology while acknowledging his ignorance of the carriage's high-profile occupant. The knight watched quietly, his stern gaze softening slightly as the boy's sincere remorse became clear. Moved by the boy's honest apology, the knight gave a short nod and granted him forgiveness. The boy gave a polite farewell and quickly walked away, eager to leave the tension behind. The knight silently watched him go, processing the strange encounter with unreadable eyes and a quiet pause. Nearby, a soldier chuckled, surprised that a simple apology diffused a situation involving a drawn weapon. He remarked on the absurdity drawing steel against someone who looked, at best, like a mere child. The knight narrowed his eyes, remembering the boy's agility. That wasn't an ordinary child, not by any measure. The knights walked through the academy grounds, chatting casually about the strange boy and his earlier stunt. One laughed, suggesting the boy had potential, even joking he should be taken in as a student. The silver-haired knight paused, clearly affected, his sharp eyes flickering at the idea with a hidden reaction. From nearby shadows, Lady Daner stepped forward with poise, intrigued by what she had witnessed earlier. She praised the boy's qualities. Another knight eagerly agreed, suggesting immediate recruitment into the prestigious magic corps. The knights escorted Lady Daner carefully, her quiet chuckle masking deeper thoughts about what just occurred. A knight politely inquired about her condition, concerned the earlier disturbance may have caused her injury. She assured them she was fine, crediting the carriage's durability for keeping her perfectly unharmed. Instead, she expressed a desire to walk, enjoying the peaceful weather near their final destination. The knights respectfully obliged as Lady Daner stepped ahead, drawing attention as they moved through the academy grounds. From a distance, the boy observed quietly, confirming the carriage belonged to someone of noble status. He leaned against the wall, relieved but thoughtful, recognizing the knight's strength and presence were no coincidence. With a small sigh, he questioned his streak of misfortune as recent troubles weighed on him. He tried to reassure himself, believing the worst had passed and he wouldn't cross paths again. But elsewhere, Lady Daner smiled knowingly, her calm expression suggesting fate might have other plans entirely. The room stood silent as Lady Daner, flanked by guards, prepared for a formal conversation. The large office doors opened. Two boys entered, one of them clearly surprised by the situation. Confused, the boy asked why he was brought, while his companion casually stepped aside to wait. Lady Daner eyed him curiously, asking if he was the rumored child with unusual potential. Though unimpressive at first glance, his companion confidently claimed the boy was among the Academy's most gifted individuals. Lady Daner observed the boy carefully, commenting on his young appearance and questioning his official status. His companion confirmed the boy's rank, explaining he recently became a mage but already outshines his peers. The boy looked away awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the exaggerated praise being heaped upon him. Lady Daner remained composed, reflecting on the rumors surrounding Opion and the mysterious figure called Black Mage. Interested in meeting him, she was disappointed to learn the Black Mage was currently away on assignment. Lady Daner calmly accepted the news of the absent mage, showing no disappointment or surprise. After a quiet pause, she shifted her posture, signaling a transition from pleasantries to serious matters. She addressed the boy directly, her expression firm, making it clear this meeting was no coincidence. The boy blinked in surprise, unsure why she recognized him or what she meant by again. With a smile, she revealed her identity. She was the carriage owner he had crashed into. The boy processed everything at once, his fall, the carriage, and her identity clearly stunned and overwhelmed. Lady Daner closed her eyes gently, believing the strange encounter was no accident, but guided by fate. She calmly addressed the Ophian master, speaking with clarity and a tone of cautious trust. The man acknowledged her sentiment, smiling as he formally expressed thanks for her gracious hospitality and interest. The boy's eyes widened in disbelief upon hearing her title. This elegant, sharp woman was a duchess. He was shocked to realize the woman wasn't just a noble, she held a duchess title. Still processing, he wondered what could drive someone of her status to visit the academy personally. Lady Daner confirmed his suspicions, revealing her visit wasn't random, but tied to something far more important. She came for her second child, hidden within Helios Academy, someone involved in something yet to unfold. Dark clouds loomed over the silent city. Rude approached with purpose, his steps heavy with hidden intent. Helios Academy towered ahead, ominous and cold. He came because of one person, the second child. Inside, a formal room awaited. Officials sat surrounded by documents, preparing to discuss classified academy matters carefully. A blond man calmly explained the case, revealing the child's role in recent disturbances within Helios. Lady Fran listened in composed silence. Her arrival signaled authority, her presence demanding answers beyond surface order. Documents were presented, behavioral reports, discipline logs, and notes detailing disruptions caused within Helios Academy's secure grounds. A marked report lay atop the stack. It contained details of internal issues surrounding one specific student. The man recalled hearing Helios mentioned repeatedly. Despite only one child's enrollment, problems had quickly escalated. Inside the academy, that child now faced scorn. Harsh voices whispered, branding him an abomination without reason. He frowned, troubled. Only he knew the child's noble blood. But removing him would risk greater suspicion. He was always a fragile, quiet child, emotionally distant, yet longing for warmth no one offered him. Overshadowed by his older brother, the boy was forgotten, left to battle loneliness from an early age. He grew up isolated, unnoticed. Even those who cared were too late to reach his silent pain. That child never healed, only learned to hide deeper. Inwardly broken, he stayed a fragile boy forevermore. Now, with regret in her voice, Fran vowed gently to protect him from ever being hurt again. A young noble condemned the mistreatment of royal children, declaring such cruelty absolutely unacceptable in any form. Lady Fran stayed composed. Her voice calm, she offered a direct request free of status or demands. She wanted only peace for her son, hoping the school could be a refuge, not a battlefield. With emotion in her plea, she asked them all protect him, wherever judgment and hate may appear. As silence settled, one man agreed. Standing upright, he calmly asked for the full situation to begin. Confused and flustered, the blond boy demanded answers, holding up the paper with visible disbelief and frustration. His companion calmly confirmed the truth. The Duchess made a formal request, and he would fulfill it. Stunned, the boy stumbled for words, overwhelmed by the absurdity and sudden responsibility being forced upon him. He protested the introduction used earlier, questioning why someone would so casually expose him as the infamous Black Mage. Laughter followed his outburst. His friend reassured him with a smile he really didn't need to worry. Despite the Academy's prestige, many students were still unawakened. The mission's danger couldn't be dismissed lightly. Rude hesitated. He hadn't accepted anything yet. He needed to investigate the earlier incident before making decisions. His companion firmly interrupted, calling his name. The past could wait. The priority now was the assignment. A folder was handed over, bearing official seals. Rude opened it, seeing a noble student's profile inside. He stared silently at the name and photo, realizing this task would be far from ordinary. Rude stared at the document in disbelief, unable to process it. "Is this a joke?" he muttered. Trying to explain, the other man raised a hand. Rude interrupted, declaring their partnership officially over no discussion. Rude thanked him flatly for their time together, saying he would handle things independently from now on. His companion was stunned as Rude dramatically turned away. Then the emotional outburst exploded with full volume. Yelling accusations, he reminded Rude of all his loyalty, furious at being shut out of the decision. The chandelier shook above as tension rose. Rude's shocked reaction showed he had no intention of complying. His partner grew frantic, having anticipated refusal. That's why he hid the mission details until the end. He grabbed Rude, trying to explain himself. Despite appearances, this mission was more personal than official obligation. The older mage's frustration broke through. He desperately wanted Rude to experience something normal, like a school life. But Rude stood unconvinced, utterly confused. No part of this situation made sense from his perspective at all. A woman entered the room, sighing at the chaos. Clearly their argument had become too loud. The red-haired officer scolded them, demanding to know why they were acting like children mid-assignment discussion. The blonde mage blamed her for interrupting without notice. She insisted she knocked, he just hadn't listened. Irritated, she told them both to sit down immediately, ending the drama with a commanding presence. As the office quieted, she turned toward them with narrowed eyes, ready to resume serious conversation again. Rude realized even Ren had known about the plan. The secrecy around him was growing frustrating. Ren tried to lighten the mood, suggesting he treat the mission like a short, relaxing school trip. She emphasized the simplicity students would be immature, the task light, and a chance to blend in. Her suggestion masked a motive: give Rude a break, perhaps even connect with peers his age. Rude looked down, silent for a moment. Before replying coldly, he had no interest in making friends. The older mage conceded. If Rude truly refused, they had no way to force the assignment. But the Duchess's direct request complicated things. Ignoring her would cause political backlash none of them wanted. He sighed heavily, joking he'd lose his head caught between duty and Rude's stubborn resistance to involvement. Rude remained quiet, expression unreadable. Deep down, he did consider the other's concerns, despite acting detached. When the mage grew overly dramatic, Ren bonked him on the head, scolding him for exaggerating again. Ren addressed Rude directly, admitting the decision had been unfairly made without consulting him from the start. She emphasized the situation's wait official enrollment meant a long-term stay, not just a temporary undercover mission. With sincerity, she placed the final decision in Rude's hands, respecting his right to choose freely. Rude fell silent, weighing the implications. The room grew quiet as both awaited his honest answer. He finally spoke, eyes calm. He didn't care about politics. If someone needed help, he'd do it. Ren and the older mage celebrated Rude's decision with dramatic flair, instantly shifting into exaggerated encouragement mode. Meanwhile, Rude sat in silence, overwhelmed by their excitement, quietly reconsidering if he made the right choice. They explained that, despite the Duchess's high status, his student identity had already been registered officially with Helios. Rude realized he couldn't be placed below average tier without suspicion it was too late to hide fully. He began reading the school documents, noting the risks involved. Caution would be necessary in every interaction. The older mage summarized with amusement. This mission was both a break and a debut assignment for Rude. It was the first time Rude Crystal would officially operate under his true identity without the mask. Ren questioned his identity. She'd only known him as Blow, surprised to finally learn his real name. Rude kept scanning the documents, pondering the cover story. It had to be airtight to avoid suspicion. As he flipped through the files, he paused on a student's photo. His target was now clear. Rude examined the photo closely. The student's sharp expression carried a cold, almost threatening gaze he recognized. He clenched the file slightly. Could this be the source of the fear surrounding the Duchess's son? His mind raced. Was this student truly the one responsible for tormenting the fragile boy in question? As Rude voiced his concern, the older mage interrupted with a knowing look, ready to correct him. With a shift in tone, he began to reveal the truth. This boy wasn't what Rude thought. The photo revealed the truth. Lidersis Dien Artian, the abused child, was the second lord himself. A golden sunset bathed the towering school in warm light as students gathered before the prestigious Helios Academy. Inside the grand hall, Elwin approached the desk, clutching several sealed letters, his face filled with concern. The clerk gestured toward regulations, calmly explaining the need for authorization. Strict rules governed all communication leaving campus. Elwin gently set the letters down, frustration creeping in his simple task, now blocked by rigid bureaucracy. Students nearby whispered and watched. One scoffed while Elwin stood still, uncertain whether to push forward or retreat. Ben hesitated. Remembering his mother's warning, her voice echoed in his mind as he clutched the letters. The older student at the desk looked apologetic, explaining again that permission was required to send anything. A sudden movement interrupted them. Rude stepped forward, calmly presenting a stamped certificate, his expression firm and composed. Ben looked up in awe as Rude handed over both letters and bags, instructions precise and brief. As the clerk complied, Ben's eyes lit up. His brother had solved everything without a single complaint. Rude held the letters firmly, his calm expression unwavering as he took responsibility without hesitation or fuss. Morning light spread across distant skies, revealing a majestic skyline that shimmered with golden rooftops and ornate spires. The palace's grand facade towered above the city, its gates wide open, welcoming movement from within. Inside, elegant halls echoed with footsteps and rustling fabrics. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation and movement. Two students passed beneath arched windows, sensing tension in the air. Something important was clearly about to unfold. In a sunlit classroom, students discussed the top scorer. His arrival sparked curiosity and subtle tension alike. Whispers filled the room as theories spread. Some eyed opportunity, others feared the unknown prodigy's sudden appearance. A silver-haired student turned away, visibly annoyed by the gossip, uninterested in rumors or schemes around newcomers. Meanwhile, another student slept at his desk, undisturbed by the noise or the growing excitement nearby. At a nearby table, friends admired a trinket from town. Casual conversation carried on as the doors opened. As footsteps echoed into the room, students paused their chatter, turning toward the growing sound with curiosity. Whispers stopped entirely. A heavy silence settled over the classroom as heads turned and eyes widened slightly. A hand gripped the back of an ornate chair, steady, deliberate, marking the newcomer's quiet but firm arrival. Around the room, students straightened in their seats, adjusting posture as tension quietly reshaped the lively atmosphere. By the door, a few latecomers froze mid-step, unsure whether to continue or simply observe in silence. One student lowered his gaze, muttering under breath. The word monster lingered like venom in the silence. A heavy aura spread across the room, dark and suffocating, swallowing whispers and smiles without resistance. Another student glanced over warily, unsure whether to feel threatened or merely fascinated by the new presence. The classroom grew still. Some students returned to routine, others stayed frozen, caught in a fog of tension. Far away, Rude sat alone, holding the letters, quietly unaware of the murmurs rippling behind his calm arrival. In a quiet lounge, Rude sat across from two officials, their eyes filled with polite suspicion. They questioned his records, how someone ill could still achieve perfection. The contrast raised more doubts than answers. Rude answered calmly, his tone light. His explanation masked deeper truths beneath a casual shrug and smile. The older man recalled the timeline. Rude's admission had come a month ago, delayed without formal justification. Papers now arrived regularly, but doubts lingered. One question hung in silence. Who was really behind this? Rude admitted the truth plainly. He needed a believable excuse to delay enrollment without raising suspicion at Helios. He had fabricated the image of a brilliant but frail student to buy time and avoid questions. Dramatically posing, Rude embraced the false persona, a sickly genius, handsome boy, complete with flowers and flair. His friend stared in disbelief, offended more by the delivery than the deception itself, barely holding composure. Laughter erupted, and one collapsed from exaggerated shock, leaving the quiet room filled with sudden, chaotic noise. A voice snapped Rude from his thoughts. His name echoed sharply across the courtyard, catching him off guard. He looked up, startled, eyes widening as a staff member called him to class with stern urgency. Rude followed along the patterned path, trying to shake lingering thoughts and realign himself with routine. The instructor glanced back coldly, masking scorn behind a smile, thoughts silently judging the student's delayed entrance. Rude lowered his gaze, understanding then, regardless of excuses, his path was always meant to lead here. As they walked, Rude questioned the purpose of it all. Why this path? Why now? Why here? He sighed quietly, brushing away doubt. This was Helios, renowned, powerful, and undeniably saturated with potent magical energy. Mana lingered in the air like mist. Every stone, every hall, hummed with concentrated magical presence. Resolute, Rude told himself the mission mattered most. Finish quickly, stay unnoticed, and leave without complication or delay. His guide offered reassurance. Status and age were irrelevant here. Strength and skill alone shaped one's path forward. Dio stood attentively in the lecture hall, listening as the lesson shifted towards something far more personal. The professor raised a finger, his expression firm. The focus now moved to individual aptitude. magical ability itself. He continued addressing the class, reminding them that many students overestimate their talents after gaining school admission. A massive magical diagram illuminated the room, symbolizing the structured power students hoped to unlock and control. Two paths emerged, golden and crimson, representing success and failure. The professor concluded, "Not all are destined for magic." Many students faced inner walls of failure bound by fear, frustration, and the reality of their weakness. Falling short of expectations, they descended into emotional collapse, consumed by doubt, unable to push forward anymore. The professor smirked slightly, questioning Rude's future, challenging whether even he could escape that common student downfall. Rude Krishi, carrying his bag calmly, stood apart. He was the academy's first student with perfect scores. Still, Rude believed without true results, achievements meant nothing. If effort failed him, he deserved to be punished. The professor's expression softened into laughter, clearly amused by Rude's blunt honesty and intense self-discipline. He laughed heartily, surprised by Rude's outlook, while the boy stood silent, quietly holding his ground. Despite his young age, Rude had earned unmatched scores, yet he remained humble, eyes filled with resolve. Recognizing Rude's rare potential, the professor formally welcomed him, one of few truly worthy of Helios's name. Rude stepped into the grand lecture hall of Helios Magic School, the journey finally beginning for real. Helios Magic School trains gifted students, those born with magical ability, shaping them into capable professional mages. Students learn how to sense and control magic, gaining refined skills through guided classroom instruction. Their power is ranked in tiers: Herace for elite, Clad for intermediate, and Eden for beginners. Everyone begins in Eden. Advancement depends on passing the school's strict yearly promotion exams. Rude observed quietly, recalling what he'd learned about the system, prepared to climb through every level alone. The instructor addressed the class, announcing the arrival of a new student who joined them late. Rude Krishi stood beside the professor as students turned to see the person joining their ranks. The professor warned them to treat Rude fairly, regardless of his late entry into the program. A quiet murmur followed. Rude kept calm, analyzing the room without showing emotion or hesitation. Stepping forward, Rude prepared to introduce himself, not with words, but with a bold, confident presence. Rude faced the class and introduced himself formally, masking tension behind a polite and composed expression. His simple greeting triggered quiet disappointment. Many students expected more from the academy's top-scoring new recruit. Among the watching students, someone observed intently, recognizing Rude instantly. A silent inner voice confirmed the target. That watcher identified Rude not as a genius, but as a disgrace and abomination of noble lineage. Seated calmly at his desk, Lidursus Dian Artian stared forward, concealing deep disdain behind icy eyes. Lidursus stared in silence, eyes fixed on Rude. No emotion showed, only cold calculation behind purple eyes. Dian sat perfectly still at the large ornate desk, alone in a room designed for meetings. Artian entered quietly, observing the emptiness around Dian, confused by the complete absence of aides or staff. He noticed how Dian didn't move at all, silent, composed, isolated like a figure trapped in time. Another student arrived and gave a subtle signal, indicating something unusual had been going on for days. Despite his calm appearance, whispers labeled Dian as dangerous, yet his true nature remained completely unexplained to them. Artian entered the classroom cautiously, eyes scanning for Dian, deciding to quietly observe from a nearby seat. He turned as someone approached Dio, a confident student with piercing eyes, eager to make introductions. Dio leaned forward, speaking casually, while Artian remained alert, unsure how to respond to the sudden attention. Surprised by Dio's age, Artian realized the boy's youthful energy contrasted sharply with the older student's reserve. Dio grinned brightly, introducing himself with ease. His presence was loud, charismatic, very different from the mysterious Dian. Dio responded respectfully to Artian's formal tone, but his relaxed posture showed he preferred easygoing conversations. Their chat was interrupted by a teacher calling Dio's full name, his tone sharp and commanding attention. The teacher reminded everyone that class status didn't matter here, each student should treat others as equals. He noted Dio's interest in befriending Krishi, implying it was only because of the boy's top rank. Artian lowered his gaze, choosing silence over attention. He had no intention of standing out just yet. Rude sat quietly while whispers spread through the room, his presence silently observed by more than one. Students approached with cheerful faces, eager to question the boy who ranked first in the entrance test. Curious voices surrounded him, asking about his tutor, background, and the secret behind his perfect score. He thought staying silent would protect him, but rumors about illness only increased their fascination. Surrounded by excited classmates, Rude grew tense. He never expected this much attention from the very beginning. During break, curious students crowded around Rude, bombarding him with questions about his age and background. Even while walking, they followed him in clusters, whispering, laughing, occasionally glancing for his reaction. Rude wondered if their attention was only because it was his first day at the academy. A teacher stepped in, dismissing the crowd gently, claiming he'd been assigned to guide Rude personally. Dio, ever enthusiastic, insisted on joining too, while Rude watched in silence, unsure how to respond. The classroom emptied. A few students debated joining, but Rude had already slipped away unnoticed. Artian returned to find Rude's seat empty, surprised by how quickly he'd disappeared without a sound. Dio reappeared, energetic and determined, grabbing Rude by the shoulder and declaring their sudden friendship. The group exited the building, bright sunlight revealing the academy's vast layout and its grand architecture. Dio led the way confidently, explaining the campus's complexity, promising Rude would adjust with time. Dio smiled, confident Rude would adapt easily. He casually asked to call him by his first name. Rude allowed it, his expression neutral, unsure what to make of Dio's open friendliness and energy. Dio confessed his early nervousness, explaining how difficult it was for nobles to gain admission here. He admitted placing last on the entrance test, disappointed that things weren't as different as he'd hoped. While Dio praised Rude's perfect score, Rude quietly looked away, muttering that it had only been luck. Rude responded calmly, telling Dio he was amazing too for standing out despite ranking at the bottom. Dio paused in surprise, unsure how to react to praise for something he felt embarrassed about. Rude explained that being last, yet still surrounded by others, showed strength not everyone could manage. Dio laughed awkwardly, flustered by Rude's sincere tone. He hadn't expected such seriousness from someone so quiet. As they walked deeper into the academy, Dio led the way, pointing out their next destination cheerfully. Dio guided Rude into a massive hall, introducing it as the famous Central Library of Helios. The towering walls and vast reading area impressed Rude, sunlight pouring through windows lined with golden accents. Dio pointed out glowing orbs, magical devices that prevented sound from leaking between conversations or study areas. He smiled, explaining that these orbs let him talk freely without disturbing others or being overheard. As they walked deeper, Dio mentioned how most upper floors weren't allowed for students from lower classes. A loud voice called from above, targeting Dio. Specifically, someone from the upper floor had taken notice. Startled, Dio turned, unsure why they were being addressed so directly inside the usually quiet library. A tall, confident student stared down, identifying Dio and confirming his affiliation with Sir Hale's class. Dio responded nervously, while Rude stood silently, sensing tension rising between the groups from different standings. Rude observed their uniform emblem, a noble insignia, confirming they belonged to a class above them in status. The upperclassman stared down with a smirk, casually asking how the abomination was doing lately. The offensive label echoed sharply, its weight turning the air heavy with unspoken hostility and judgment. He grinned coldly, clearly enjoying the discomfort his words caused, waiting for a reaction from below. Dio hesitated, forcing out a shaky response, doing his best not to escalate the situation further. The upperclassman chuckled, unimpressed, then waved them off as if bored, returning to whatever he'd been doing. The tension faded as they moved away. Neither said a word, both still shaken from the encounter. Dio exhaled loudly, joking that his heart nearly burst from how intense the situation had become. Rude asked, puzzled by Dio's reaction, wondering why he got so nervous facing upper-class students. Dio grinned, calling Rude inexperienced, someone who had yet to truly face the harshness of real society. He then offered to share a story, promising it would help Rude survive within Helios Academy. Dio began his story with a warning. Never oppose the elite upper class known as Harase. He explained they're a small group, but their exceptional skills are officially acknowledged by the Academy. Only a handful exist powerful students who can single-handedly overwhelm entire classes without breaking a sweat. Rude questioned why such dangerous people were still treated like stars instead of being kept in check. Dio shrugged, saying they're admired more than feared. Rude, still confused, asked what the second rule was. Dio leaned close, lowering his voice dramatically as he prepared to reveal his second important rule. He warned Rude about Eshel von Hadelio, the glittering blonde student they encountered in the library earlier. Dio stressed that avoiding him entirely would be safest, as any interaction could quickly spiral into danger. Despite their talents, Dio claimed harass members, especially Eshel, had extreme personalities that were difficult to tolerate. Rude tried to ask more, but Dio hushed him, insisting this warning was serious and not optional. Rude leaned in, lowering his voice, warning Dio of the danger hidden beneath a noble's name. Chevelle von Hadeloy, heir to a powerful family, had influence that reached even the most distant circles. Rude explained that anyone foolish enough to cross him usually vanished, ruined by quiet but deadly means. His eyes narrowed, stressing that a single misstep with Chevelle could trap someone in endless, unbearable torment. Dio frowned, confused by another's label as an abomination, but Rude's stare silenced him with knowing caution. Dio tried asking for details, but Rude shut him down swiftly with a jab to the side. With a cheerful smile, Rude dismissed the topic, dragging Dio along like nothing unusual had just happened. He declared their tour unfinished, pointing ahead and urging Dio to follow without further complaints or questions. The two walked through the academy courtyard, sun overhead, crowds passing, Rude clearly guiding with careful intent. They entered a potion shop next, where Rude's tone turned serious while the clerk greeted them silently. Rude and Dio arrived at the grand central hall, its golden entrance glowing beneath the afternoon light. Dio asked another question, but Rude waved it off, determined to stay lighthearted and avoid deeper discussions. The day passed swiftly as they explored more of the academy, walking through quiet courtyards and busy streets. Sunset painted the sky red as their tour ended, both students silently taking in the fading warmth. Later, in a quiet lounge, Dio sat surrounded by luggage, deep in thought, Rude nowhere in sight. Dio looked around the lounge, overwhelmed, muttering that it felt more like an expedition than school orientation. Though annoyed, he admitted Rude's knowledge was impressive, likely gained from experience, not just reading books alone. He sat quietly, mulling over Rude's odd behavior and wondering how someone ranked low knew so much. A staff member entered the lounge, asking if he was Rude Krishi. Dio answered shortly without hesitation. The woman confirmed his luggage had arrived, offering a temporary room assignment until a roommate was chosen. The staff repeated that Rude would stay in a temporary room until a proper match was found. Rude raised an eyebrow, surprised that the decision hadn't already been finalized before his arrival on campus. She explained a rule limiting lower-ranked students from staying in upper-class rooms without specific permission granted. Rude questioned whether any single rooms were still unoccupied, prompting her to pause, caught off guard by it. He mentioned Lidersis Dien Artian, recalling that the noble boy had no roommate assigned and stayed alone. Rude stood before the ornate door, hesitating for a second before stepping closer with steady determination. He held up the key he'd just received, its charm glinting faintly in the hallway light. A moment passed as he stared at it, unsure whether this was truly the right decision. The staff member reminded him it was his request and offered support if he changed his mind. Rude sighed, recalling how difficult it was to convince her this situation might turn awkward very quickly. With a deep breath, Rude stepped inside, telling himself it was time to meet his target. He moved quietly down the hallway, alert and calculating, his eyes scanning for any sign of presence. The room seemed empty at first glance, and Rude wondered if his new roommate was absent. He gently pushed the door farther open, the hinges creaking as light spilled across the polished floor. The massive room stretched before him, ornate, quiet and warm, furnished richly, but devoid of any human presence. Rude scanned the lavish furniture, noting the intricate designs and oversized bed dominating the quiet, golden room. He crossed his arms, slightly amused, thinking the space was far too extravagant for two students. His attention turned toward the bed, sunlight spilling over a lump beneath the sheets that barely moved. He frowned, suspicious, wondering if the person assigned here could really be sleeping at this late hour. Rude approached quietly, muttering that he wasn't here to babysit some wealthy, overprotected noble lying in bed. Rude reached out and gently pulled back the blanket, revealing the sleeping figure curled underneath it. The boy beneath the sheets had soft features and chestnut hair, resting peacefully without noticing a thing. Rude blinked in surprise, slightly taken aback by how undisturbed and serene the boy looked asleep. He crossed his arms, thinking it was strange for someone to sleep so soundly in shared housing. Standing at the bedside, Rude stared silently, unsure whether to speak, wait, or leave him undisturbed. Rude sighed and turned away, deciding he might as well start unpacking before things got hectic. But as he moved, the boy's eyes slowly opened, revealing sharp, glowing irises beneath sleepy lids. From the bed, the boy watched Rude silently, body still and gaze fixed with quiet awareness. Rude paused mid-step, feeling the air shift, sensing that the peaceful sleeper was no longer unaware. Yet the boy said nothing, resting his head again, as if watching had been enough for now. Night fell. Rude sat quietly at his desk, glancing occasionally at the still figure in bed. The sky above the academy darkened, stars veiled by clouds, casting a shadow over the silent halls. The majestic building stood tall beneath moonlight, its domes glowing faintly under the dark velvet sky. Inside, a chandelier swayed gently in the breeze, its lights flickering like whispers echoing through the room. A man grumbled as he entered a dim corridor, arms full, annoyed by repeated summons and interruptions. The blue-haired man sighed, muttering about constant disruptions and how difficult work was in this tower. His eyes widened slightly as he realized something unusual, a contract had yet to be finalized. Panicked, he promised to deliver soon, asking for time while glancing nervously through the window behind him. A sharp knock startled him. He turned and gasped, seeing only a shadow slipping swiftly down the hall. Professor Hale burst into the room, confused. The assistant stammered, insisting he'd seen a shadow just now. A chilling presence swept across the room as the assistant nervously scanned for movement among the bookshelves. Shadows curled unnaturally overhead, crawling down walls like smoke, invisible to all except the most sensitive senses. Though the corridor appeared still, unease crept along the assistant's spine. Something was definitely watching them. The professor's breathing grew shallow. He recognized the sensation. This wasn't paranoia. Something dark had entered quietly. Surrounded by silence and curling shadows, he braced himself, fully aware that this presence demanded a response. Morning light spilled over the academy, revealing its towering spires, vast courtyards, and sunlit, orderly buildings. Lying in bed, the boy blinked slowly, stirred awake by the warmth pressing through the window. He stared at the ornate ceiling in silence, tracing the patterns with his eyes, still half dreaming. Sitting up sluggishly, he exhaled, realizing he had slept longer than usual without sensing any disturbance. Glancing across the room, he confirmed the other bed was empty. His new roommate had already left. He sat in silence, puzzled, wondering when exactly his roommate had left without making a sound. Despite his efforts to engage last night, the boy remained quiet, pretending to be asleep throughout. Now awake, he realized Rude's aloofness wasn't indifference. It was a habit of practiced caution. He stood and stretched, noting the sunlight and lively chatter outside. The academy already felt in motion. Outside, students gathered in groups, laughing and talking. Some paused, startled by something unexpected arriving in their midst. Standing by the window, he watched students outside, his thoughts racing faster than the passing clouds. Whispers reached him through the open air. He was already the center of quiet, growing attention below. They gossiped about his perfect admission score, his assignment to Hale's class, and his strange roommate. What disturbed them most wasn't the assignment, it was that he had chosen the roommate himself, deliberately. He sighed, realizing the situation was more delicate than expected. His actions had drawn more attention than planned. From the rooftop, he watched the murmuring crowd below, deciding it was time to act directly. Rude observed the harsh tension, realizing the academy viewed them as a threat rather than fellow students. He clenched his jaw, frustrated that his covert presence was already unraveling faster than he had planned. Outside, a group of students noticed the disturbance, confused by the urgency and sudden change in mood. As the disciplinary group marched ahead, Rude silently followed, masking his concern under a calm, unreadable expression. Meanwhile, Two students hesitated to intervene, choosing silence over risk, dismissing the situation as nothing too serious. Rude stood still, his eyes steady, as if calculating the weight behind the confrontation ahead. He stepped forward without hesitation, intercepting the conflict with swift motion before anyone else could respond. His voice cracked like cold glass calm, but sharp, demanding why they refused to understand simple instructions. The aggressor sneered, mocking him cruelly, insisting a lowborn like Rude had no place among elites. Yet Rude lowered his gaze, ignoring the insult, focused instead on the subtle tension behind the words. Mocking laughter echoed behind him as the bully dismissed Rude's presence like dirt beneath noble shoes. Rude listened quietly, but the weight of rumors and lies about his past began to resurface. They claimed he was disowned, left behind, unworthy of the noble name he supposedly once held. He clenched his fists, breath shallow, yet still refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. The instigator smirked, unaware Rude's silence wasn't weakness but a warning, seconds before something far darker awakened. One student hesitated, warning them Manon might retaliate if they pushed the cruelty any further. The leader scoffed, calling Rude an abomination, insisting no one important would dare protect him. Grinning, he mocked the situation, relishing this rare chance to hurt someone tied to noble blood. He raised his foot, ready to strike when something slammed into him, cutting his sentence in half. A heavy book struck his head, sending him tumbling, as others stared in stunned confusion and fear. A calm voice echoed above them as Rude stood tall, claiming the flying book as his. He stepped forward, eyes steady, politely asking for his book to be returned without further nonsense. The boys flinched, startled by his sudden approach and the eerie composure behind his quiet words. One stumbled backward, eyes wide, as Rude's presence grew heavier like gravity itself bent to his will. A sharp pain cracked through his body as Rude's eyes glowed, releasing restrained magical pressure silently. Rude approached casually, feigning surprise as he mocked the bully sprawled out flat on the ground. Another student stood in shock, questioning what was happening and why things escalated so quickly. Rude replied coolly, stating they were the ones behaving strangely, he was simply reclaiming what was his. Enraged, one boy lunged, shouting insults, unable to bear being mocked by someone of lesser status. Before the punch landed, Rude effortlessly caught his arm, shocking everyone with his strength and precision. Rude caught the incoming punch with precision, his gaze calm while energy quietly coiled beneath his skin. The attacker's confidence wavered as he realized Rude's strength wasn't just defense, it was overwhelming, disciplined force. No hesitation followed. Rude maintained control, his grip unyielding as he prepared to respond with equal measure. A flicker of defiance crossed the bully's face, but panic quickly surfaced under Rude's unwavering presence. With one swift motion, Rude launched him backward, the force sending the boy skidding across stone tiles. Rude descended the stairs calmly, his posture relaxed, while unconscious bodies lay scattered across the courtyard below. One student groaned faintly, barely lifting his head before collapsing again, completely overwhelmed by Rude's precise retaliation. The full scene revealed the aftermath students strewn helplessly, bruised and stunned in utter silence and disbelief. Rude observed the results coolly, realizing his strength had surged beyond what he initially intended to use. As he turned to leave, thoughts raced. Littersis Academy was clearly far more dangerous than he expected. Rude walked swiftly down the corridor, determined to investigate the source of disturbance he sensed earlier. His pace slowed as he spotted a familiar figure standing alone, body rigid, face shadowed in pain. Ludersis called out, but the boy ahead didn't turn. His voice was cold, filled with quiet resistance. The silver-haired boy warned him firmly, demanding distance, as if contact alone might trigger something dangerous within. His hand clenched tightly at his chest, guarding himself as though proximity could tear open old wounds. Footsteps echoed through the corridor as someone approached the balcony, noticing an unusual scene below. Two students looked on in surprise, startled by the sight of unconscious bodies scattered across the ground. From above, Rude silently observed the aftermath of his encounter, emotions unreadable behind his calm expression. His thoughts lingered on the warning being near that boy felt like stepping towards something broken and dangerous. Down below, academy life carried on, unaware of the quiet clash that had just shaken its walls. A group of students chatted nearby, unaware of the deeper conflict unfolding among their classmates. Rude watched silently. Noticing subtle changes in behavior, some students acted cautious. Others quietly whispered behind hands. He scanned the crowd. Eyes searching, Lidersis was nowhere in sight, the encounter still lingering in thought. A twinge of guilt surfaced. Rude wondered if he should have followed Lidersis instead of keeping distance. Before he could reflect further, someone suddenly grabbed his arm, pulling him away with urgent surprise. A door slammed open as the blue-haired boy rushed in, clearly flustered and filled with concern. He called out urgently, demanding answers about rumors that Rude was sharing a room with someone infamous. Rude confirmed it without hesitation, his calm demeanor clashing with the other's anxious and wide-eyed panic. Clutching his head in regret, the blue-haired boy muttered about consequences, wishing he'd explained everything sooner. Trying to regain control, he insisted on a room transfer, claiming it was for Rude's protection. The blue-haired boy leaned in, eyes fierce, warning that staying close to Lidersis would bring misery. A flashback revealed hushed whispers. Lidersis, seated in a grand room, labeled the disgrace of the Arshan family. Rude processed the revelation quietly, understanding that Lidersis carried noble blood and the weight of cruel rejection. The warning deepened. Chevelle, a powerful figure, seemed to be behind the stigma isolating the troubled young master. Rude remained composed, piecing it together. Behind the drama and danger, Chevelle was orchestrating something far greater. Rude's tone shifted, calmly turning the question back, challenging the logic behind Lidersis's mistreatment by others. Hidden in the corridor, Lidersis stood still, overhearing every word with a clenched jaw and trembling silence. The boy stared in silence, unsure how to respond to the question that pierced his conscience. His friend's voice challenged him, asking if he thought it was right to label Lidersis a monster. That harsh truth hit harder. Someone powerful had silenced the boy, leaving him alone and condemned. The weight of guilt settled in. He looked down, unable to deny the injustice he'd ignored. Rude hesitated, admitting it was unfair. Still, the truth lingered, sharp and unforgiving in the empty room. A new voice joined calmly, agreeing with the truth. His hand gripped Rude's arm, steady and sincere. Surprised, Rude turned. The blond boy's quiet gaze held no anger, only a question seeking fairness. From a distance, Lidersis sat alone among crates, his presence quiet, watching them speak without interrupting. The blond boy's voice echoed, calling Lidersis to answer. His tone was gentle, but it demanded honesty. Rude's voice cracked slightly, confused by his own emotions. His hand brushed the wood as silence followed. Lidersis flinched at the sound, his fingers trembling against the crate, emotions stirring beneath his calm face. Chapter 16 began with heavy silence, the weight of spoken truth pressing down on all three. Rude's voice cracked. He realized too late Lidersis had heard everything. Guilt flooded the air between them. The blond boy's heart sank. "How long?" he whispered, stunned that Lidersis had quietly endured their talk. Lidersis turned away, silent and distant. The blond boy stepped forward, reaching out. "Wait, Lidu." But he kept walking. Lidersis bumped into the stacked crates, sending them toppling. The sound echoed sharply through the quiet space. The other two boys stood stunned. The noise confirmed it. Lidersis wasn't just walking away, he was hurting. Rude stepped forward impulsively, wanting to reach out, but the blond boy grabbed his arm, silently warning him. Lidersis stopped mid-step but didn't turn back. His body stiffened, as if bracing for words that cut. The blond boy looked on, resigned. He had seen it before, how reaching out often led nowhere. Lidersis began to walk away, his voice low but firm this time. He wouldn't tolerate interference. His steps echoed alone. He tried to maintain composure, but the heaviness in his chest deepened. With each step, tension grew. The space between them widened, yet something unspoken still clung tightly. Suddenly, a hand reached out, gently grabbing his wrist, halting his retreat with quiet insistence and care. Lidersis turned slightly. The blond boy stood still, his expression serious, silently pleading for him to listen. Rude stepped forward, voice calm but serious. He felt they had reached a point that demanded honesty. The blond boy supported him silently. Lidersis faced them, unreadable, his long hair shadowing his expression. Without hesitation, Lidersis dismissed them. His words were curt, shoulders tense, refusing to be drawn into conversation. He pulled his arm free, breaking the physical connection his decision made, unwilling to open that door. Rude suddenly collapsed. The blonde boy's eyes widened, panic rising. Something was wrong, this wasn't part of the plan. Frustration filled the air. The blue-haired boy questioned Rude's insistence. What could he possibly achieve with Leducis? Rude answered plainly they shared a room. His concern wasn't obligation, it was born from quiet observation. The blonde boy's thoughts deepened. How could 1 month of silence make someone feared by everyone? In the ballroom, Leducis entered quietly. Whispers and stares followed him, students drawing away with wary expressions. As he passed through, voices muttered behind his back, words sharp, judgments made without knowing. Monster! Darkness surged in Leducis's memory. The word monster didn't echo, it burned, branding him with isolation. Blood clung to his uniform. Amid bodies and ruin, he stood frozen, horror carved into his expression. Shadows writhed around his feet. The battlefield, scorched and silent, stretched endlessly beneath the heavy sky. He faced the towering academy alone. Its grandeur faded, overwhelmed by guilt he couldn't leave behind. A boy's cold gaze surfaced. His memory twisted the face, connecting blame and loss in quiet judgment. Leducis gasped. A surge of energy awakened behind his eyes, an unnatural glow he struggled to suppress. His body trembled. Memories and pressure collided inside him, threatening to shatter his fragile composure completely. He staggered into the hallway, leaning against the door. Bright light mocked the storm in his chest. Elsewhere, the blue-haired boy puzzled aloud, trying to understand the deeper cause behind Leducis's harsh reputation. Yet his answer was simple: he didn't know. The truth remained hidden behind silence and forced smiles. The blonde boy initially brushed it off, but Rude's sudden shift in tone made him pause. Rude admitted he knew some details, hesitating as fragments of the past started resurfacing in his mind. He spoke carefully, recalling how the rumors all began, how it started small, before spiraling beyond control. Chevelle was mentioned first. After that day, the label monster clung tightly to Lord Artian's name. A memory surfaced. Students gathered at Helios's grand library. It was there something changed in Arshan forever. The rumors spoke of a terrifying transformation, Arshan engulfed in shadow, his form monstrous and unrecognizable. Wild tales followed: 3 eyes, 8 arms, fur, claws. Exaggeration or not, fear rooted itself quickly in everyone. Rude flinched at the absurdity. The image was too strange, yet the tension on campus was real. Though the blue-haired boy doubted the tales, the fact remained something unexplainable had indeed taken place that day. The library stood silent afterward, sealed for days. No official word. Only whispers lingered, ominous and unresolved. Rude tried shifting the topic. They'd talked enough about Artian room changes, now seemed more urgent. He reasoned the rumors had already spread to everyone, and it was only a matter of time. The blonde boy reflected, recalling how others' expressions had shifted, something subtle, but unmistakably colder than yesterday. His silence grew heavy. Then, a quiet question. Would Rude avoid him too, like the rest? Surprised, Rude paused mid-step. The question pierced deeper than expected, hitting a truth he hadn't wanted to face. The blonde boy smiled faintly, hopeful. He believed Dio wouldn't leave him, not after everything they'd shared. Dio hesitated, then nodded. His reply was quiet but sincere, carrying the weight of recent doubts. They walked into the crowded hallway. Students stared as before, but something about their gazes felt colder. Rude scanned the room. The whispers hadn't changed, but the way people looked at them had. Dio leaned closer, uneasy. Rude seemed calm, yet his silence hinted at something defiant brewing beneath the surface. Dio paused before answering, tension behind his smile. "Of course not," he said, trying to reassure. Rude noticed the delay. That silence before speaking subtle, but enough to raise quiet suspicion in him. His gaze sharpened. Why was Dio so intent on helping someone everyone else had written off? Dio lowered his voice. It wasn't really about helping. It all started because of a single request. The two moved through the dining hall. Students gathered in groups, yet the space felt divided. Rude glanced at Leducis from afar, his heart uneasy. Something about the boy's silence felt heavy. He looked down, remembering the quiet plea that started it all, an unspoken cry for understanding. Dio called to him softly, sensing Rude's thoughts slipping deeper into conviction and inner turmoil. Rude finally spoke. If he stayed silent, he'd be no different from those who judged unfairly. Leducis stood alone in memory, labeled a monster, enduring whispers, and bearing wounds no one could see. Rude called out to Dio, voice steady as they exited something unspoken now firmly decided between them. Dio responded casually, not yet sensing the weight behind Rude's words or the commitment taking root. "We're already on the same boat now," Rude thought aloud, declaring quietly that their paths were linked. Elsewhere, Leducis placed his hand on the desk still, distant, marked by invisible burdens no one saw. Despite Helios claiming status meant nothing, whispers spread. Artian's name wasn't one to be ignored easily. Whispers stirred as Leducis entered. His calm, unreadable presence unsettled the room more than loud anger. Eyes followed him, expecting reaction. He did nothing, just stood, composed, quiet beneath the weight of suspicion. Even as judgment swirled around him like smoke, his posture stayed still, hands gently placed in silence. He faced the tension without words. The pressure of hate pressed down, yet he never flinched. His fingers trembled faintly. A soft breath escaped as he opened his glowing eye, resignation quietly rising. The three boys sat in silence. Tension remained, but curiosity slowly began replacing uncertainty and fear. Rude stared ahead, silent, as thoughts tangled in his mind, uncertain of what awaited him next. Inside the grand hall, students gathered, some whispering, some watching while Rude remained still, masking his sharp awareness. He remembered the old texts, mages once revered as divine messengers, now diluted by institutional vanity and rules. Lectures spoke of great saviors, beings of power who commanded nature and terrified those born of darkness. Rude listened quietly, the irony sharp, those once exalted now trained among the clueless, hiding strength beneath a smile. As chaos brewed outside, the lecture continued, warning that monstrous beings were now running wild across lands. Rude's eyes narrowed, catching Dio behind his book, quiet, but clearly absorbing every word in silence. The professor insisted that despite contradictions, mages deserved praise for holding back a tide of growing evil. Only the gifted could resist the horrors. Mere mortals stood no chance without magical defense and sacrifice. Rude glanced around, some students whispered, some scoffed, unaware how close true darkness sat among them already. Lightercyst turned her gaze, sensing unrest not in the lecture, but within the shifting glances between students. Quiet murmurs spread across the room like ripples, a subtle tension none dared voice too clearly. Her eyes met another student's expression, unreadable, intentions veiled, yet something unspoken seemed to pass between them. In the background, most remained distracted, unaware of the subtle web of attention forming around one seat. With a calm voice, Gurion finally spoke. "Hey, Lightercyst," breaking the silence like a cautious invitation. Lightercyst remained silent, eyes low, face unreadable, his calm expression masking a swirl of thoughts within. Gurion stood beside him, hesitant, uncertain whether to interrupt the silence or respect the withdrawn demeanor. The class carried on around them, voices rising as Dio grew frustrated by Rude's continued distraction. Breaking the rising tension, Rude suddenly leaned back, shifting attention by exaggerating discomfort with calculated timing. With casual ease, he redirected focus, feigning hunger, not confusion, concealing his real thoughts behind a disarming expression. Rude sat alone in the classroom, distant from others, deep in thought as silence surrounded him. His eyes lingered on untouched food, recalling someone's advice. The decision before him wasn't simple. Two students, seated across from each other in the dining hall, discussed something serious and personal. The blue-haired student leaned forward, frustration showing, pointing out how their presence seemed to make no difference. The blonde responded softly, unsure and conflicted, believing there might still be meaning in their connection. He slouched in his chair, sighing deeply, the words, "I'm bored," escaping with quiet frustration. Resting his cheek on his hand, he stared forward, eyes unfocused, thoughts drifting without a clear aim. Across the room, Rude remained silent, reading diligently, with another student beside him immersed in study. Fingers turned the pages slowly, scanning diagrams and notes with care, focused entirely on the subject material. The blonde watched quietly, realization dawning in his eyes. He's different, focused, serious, always like that. He noticed something odd. Rude sat silently, reading a book that was clearly upside down. Despite Rude's stillness, the blonde assumed he was deeply troubled. masking concern with an emotionless expression. He tried to reflect calmly, but the atmosphere around him had changed. Classmates now avoided eye contact. Across the table, Rude covered his face, seemingly withdrawn, as tension quietly built between the two. The blonde leaned forward, attempting connection again, but then, unexpectedly, Rude broke silence with a calm stare. The hall doors opened as a group of students entered confidently, drawing everyone's attention mid-conversation. The blonde turned his head, alert. Something about their timing and formation signaled a shift in atmosphere. Rude looked up as the group approached. Their presence was deliberate, eyes fixed on a clear target. One student stepped forward, voice steady, asking directly if Rude was the person they were searching for. The blonde answered calmly on Rude's behalf, his posture unchanged, showing no concern despite the rising tension. Tension escalated as one student lashed out, accusing Rude with anger and raising his voice publicly. Another student recognized the angry boy, startled by his sudden outburst and the group's coordinated approach. The lead figure calmly requested Rude to step away, ignoring the commotion as authority silenced the room. They led Rude through the academy grounds, away from the cafeteria, drawing curious eyes from all directions. Outside, the commanding student dismissed the others. His tone was sharp. This matter required no audience. The boy who challenged Rude reluctantly backed down, frustrated but unwilling to defy the senior's authority. The stern upperclassman remained calm and composed, showing no emotion as he kept the situation under control. Rude and his companion stood quietly together, watching the events unfold without flinching or stepping back. The blonde boy's mind flashed to a memory that Senior was once seen with someone powerful. They now stood in the academy courtyard, realization setting in. That upperclassman wasn't ordinary, he had connections. The older student leaned in seriously, assuming the reason for their meeting should already be understood. The blonde answered plainly, showing no concern, clearly unfazed by the upperclassman's vague, leading statement. Rude watched quietly from behind, slightly confused by the vague tension and unexpected direction the conversation took. The upperclassman scoffed, adjusting his glasses, labeling the blonde as reckless for ignoring subtle academy warnings. Expression hardening, he issued a blunt warning. Stay away from Rude, someone he called an abomination. The blonde stood silently beside Rude, echoing the word abomination, as if questioning its meaning aloud. Feigning innocence, he denied any knowledge, directly challenging the claim with calm curiosity and sharp undertones. The upperclassman's expression faltered briefly, caught off guard by the unexpected boldness and lack of fear shown. His tone grew harsher, accusing the blonde of false compassion or selfish motives for staying close to Rude. Eyes cold, he warned again, "Stop now before consequences come. Everything has a cost, whether seen or not." Dark memories echoed in the upperclassman's mind, recalling chaos tied to the so-called monster's past. He warned them coldly, approach that person again, and they would suffer the consequences instead. The blonde responded calmly, asking whether this was supposed to be advice or something more serious. Without hesitation, the older student corrected him it wasn't advice. He turned away, ending the conversation. Both students stood silently, absorbing the heavy words as the warning settled in the air like stone. The sun set over the academy, casting long shadows as students drifted quietly through golden hallways below. Dion stood alone by the railing, staring into the horizon, troubled thoughts hidden behind a composed expression. Below him, Rude sat silently against the fence, legs stretched out, seemingly relaxed but clearly avoiding eye contact. Dion remained standing, arms crossed, unsure whether to push the conversation further or let silence explain everything. Rude finally rose, brushing dust from his uniform, meeting Dion's eyes with calm determination under fading light. Dion outlined the situation calmly, stressing the need for allies before taking any risks or bold steps. The academy rooftop stood still beneath sunset skies, a quiet contrast to the tension in their plans. Dion remained composed, arms crossed, suggesting they hold back for now and focus on observing the situation. He stressed understanding what really happened, urging Rude to find someone who could clarify things from inside. Rude tilted his head slightly, processing Dion's words, uncertain but listening as dusk settled over the academy. Dion made his way through the academy halls, determined to speak with Littersis face-to-face tonight. His steps echoed softly as he approached the office door, hand raised, ready to confront the truth. Inside, The room was quiet. He paused, planning their next move, whether peaceful or something far riskier. Dion glanced around the empty space, frustration building. The person he needed most was nowhere in sight. He turned to face the desk calmly but firmly, greeting the one person now present, the composed Lidersis. Lidersis leaned forward, voice calm but firm, repeating her question with quiet intensity and direct concern. Dion looked away slightly, responding with restraint. His voice was steady, but clearly hiding deeper unresolved truths. A heavy silence followed. The air thickened with everything unsaid, tension lingering between careful words and glances. Lidersis spoke gently, reminding him she knew Diener. She offered help, but only if he truly wanted it. Dion's gaze dropped. Her last words echoed sharply. Without his will, the school could offer nothing at all. The hallway bustled with students, light chatter beneath chandeliers as Dion searched the crowd with growing urgency. He stepped forward, calling out politely, trying to get someone's attention before the moment slipped away. Dion asked about Lidersis, but the startled student responded with panic, clearly overwhelmed by the sudden question. Without warning, the student fled in a flustered rush, leaving Dion staring after him in confused silence. Dion narrowed his eyes slightly, watching the exit. That reaction wasn't normal. Something about it felt very wrong. Whispers followed Dion through the corridor. Students stared cautiously, recognizing him, yet choosing to keep distance. He paused, hearing their harsh words. Their glances felt heavy, and isolation clung to him like mist. Dion hesitated, unsure how to approach. Then a silver-haired girl unexpectedly offered quiet help without hesitation. She calmly explained where the target might have gone, recalling a strange box he'd been carrying earlier. Surprised by her honesty, Dion responded with a soft thanks, grateful for the rare moment of kindness. Dion turned when the girl called out. Behind her, others watched, whispering with concern and judgment. A student stepped forward, questioning her choice. Their voices implied Dion was dangerous, someone to avoid entirely. They cautioned her again. What if Dion was unstable? What if she got hurt just by helping? Dion slowed his pace, puzzled. He glanced back, sensing something different in her reaction compared to others. As he turned, she stepped forward too, meeting his eyes, expression firm, despite pressure from the crowd. The girl's eyes narrowed with resolve. Her voice broke the air firm, rejecting their cruel assumptions outright. Dion clarified his intent calmly, stating that he wasn't chasing rumors, he was simply looking for Lidersis. Turning away, he resumed walking without pause, leaving the tension and whispers behind as she watched silently. She stood stunned, blinking in disbelief. His response disarmed her completely. She hadn't expected anything so direct. On a balcony nearby, a hand gripped the stone rail tightly, as if hearing everything below. From the balcony, Dion watched the courtyard below, calculating where to wait for a better vantage. He reasoned the target would pass by soon if heading toward the western storage as expected. Students flowed beneath him like water. Dion narrowed his eyes, scanning carefully for any familiar face below. He blinked, briefly unsure had he missed him already. The crowd was thick, movements fast and scattered. Suddenly, Dion's gaze locked onto a lone figure carrying a box. He whispered sharply, "There he is!" Dion leaned forward, lips parting to shout, but hesitation clutched his voice before the words escaped him. He stopped himself, realizing the distance and crowd would muffle any attempt. It wasn't the right moment. Eyes lowered, Dion questioned his next move. Could he reach the boy without drawing attention to himself? Elsewhere, someone watched with cold intensity, their expression grim. The message was silent, but clear. A warning. Still on the balcony, Dion stood motionless, unaware of the unseen threat now shifting into place below. Dion exhaled slowly, decision made. His hesitation vanished as determination returned to his eyes and stance. Suddenly, a girl's shout pierced the air. "Lidersis!" Her voice echoed across the bustling school grounds. Gasps followed as all eyes turned. Students looked stunned, watching her disrupt the calm without hesitation. Startled, Lidersis turned sharply, arms full, his face twisting in alarm at the unexpected call and attention. He looked up, eyes wide, locking onto Dion's distant silhouette now revealed above the gathering crowd. Dion raised his hand slightly, a silent signal he was ready now, no more holding back. Below, Lidersis froze. Dion's voice reached him faintly. For a moment, he considered stopping, then turned away. Dion watched him move, eyes sharp. The crowd shifted as Lidersis started running toward the west. A quiet realization struck Dion as he leaned forward, gaze narrowed. He's running again, he thought grimly. Clutching the box tightly, Lidersis dashed ahead, avoiding the truth, the questions, and the person chasing him. Dion's expression hardened as he stared downward, his thoughts silent, face shadowed by growing doubt and frustration. Lidersis walked away in a dim storage hall, his back turned, posture distant and emotionally detached. A cold response formed internally. Lidersis rejected the need to confront or explain, disappearing deeper into isolation. Above, Dion's hands gripped the ledge tightly, body tense, the setting sun casting long shadows around him. He lowered his gaze with quiet resignation, fully aware Lidersis had no plans to face him willingly. Footsteps echoed as someone dashed across the field, kicking up dust beneath the golden light of evening. A blast of energy split the path, scattering debris as the runner vanished into the surrounding trees. The sun lit the woods in amber hues as Lidersis ran deeper, swallowed by forest and urgency. Students turned sharply, startled by the motion and the force, unsure whether to follow or flee themselves. Dion stepped forward with resolve, eyes steady, preparing to pursue without hesitation into whatever danger lay ahead. Lidersis sprinted through the courtyard, eyes sharp, only to suddenly hear his name shouted from behind. He turned in alarm as someone crashed down in front of him, stopping his escape mid-stride. The impact sent a shockwave across the courtyard. Dust swirled while students stared in complete disbelief. Among the onlookers, two students exchanged glances, confused, curious, and clearly shaken by what they just witnessed. Their eyes slowly traced upward, stunned that someone had leapt from the upper floor without hesitation. A student sprinted from the academy building, golden light casting long shadows across the neatly kept grounds. He dashed through the tall grass, arms pumping, as leaves and petals scattered from his rapid movement. He leaped up the steps toward the main courtyard, his urgency drawing attention from nearby academy students. Several uniformed students turned, surprised by the sudden commotion, watching his movement with confusion and curiosity. Realizing their stares, he slowed, slightly embarrassed he hadn't meant to draw attention, only to escape quickly. Chasing closely, the older student frowned. Despite appearances, the younger one ran with surprising speed. Struggling to keep up, he clenched his fist, pushing harder through the courtyard's golden haze. Driven by instinct, he ignored the oddness right now. Capturing the runaway was his only goal. His hand stretched out, nearing the target, just inches away from grabbing the back of his shirt. With a sharp pivot, the younger boy spun, hand glowing as energy surged between their palms. The younger boy surged forward, magic pulsing around him, launching himself away in a burst of speed. Eyes widening, the chaser realized the truth: he had just been outrun by a spell-enhanced dash. His breath caught. That boy wasn't just fast, he was skilled. Hidden power now suddenly made sense. Startled, he paused mid-step, unsure whether to chase further or rethink everything he'd just witnessed. From afar, the boy turned and muttered faintly, "Sorry," leaving the other student confused and speechless. He stopped running, turned firmly, and stared back, clearly done with the pointless back-and-forth chase. Brows furrowed, he questioned the reason behind this nonsense, frustrated by how it all spiraled out. The other boy lowered his head, avoiding eye contact, clearly troubled but unable to give an answer. They stood apart on the path, distance echoing the emotional gap neither wanted to admit yet. With a hesitant breath, the boy finally looked up and softly spoke the name stuck in thought. Several students stood watching from a raised platform, their attention locked on the two boys below. The school grounds stretched beneath soft sunlight, surrounding trees gently swaying as silence settled over everything. A tall student with golden hair turned slightly, observing the scene unfold with sharp, unreadable eyes. Beside him, other students remained quiet, their expressions uncertain, trying to process what just occurred. Below, the long-haired boy took a slow step forward, his posture calmer, tension visibly fading away. His thoughts screamed, overwhelmed and raw. The demand echoed. He needed space, distance, anything but closeness now. The long-haired boy's face trembled with emotion, voice low but firm, avoiding eye contact as he spoke. The blonde stared back, startled by the rejection, silent under the golden light as tension filled the air. They stood apart again, quiet and motionless, separated not just by space but by trust breaking down. With a heavy heart, the blonde nodded slowly, agreeing, his voice low. He would respect the distance now. A hesitant hand moved forward, reaching through silence as if wanting to stop something already unraveling. Suddenly, the long-haired boy burst forward, shouting, his emotions erupting as the peaceful moment shattered instantly. The blonde reeled back, wide-eyed and stunned, completely unprepared for the aggressive shift in energy and distance. Grabbing the front of his uniform, the boy yanked him close, eyes burning with mixed frustration and fear. Now, face to face, tension peaked. His grip tightened, challenging the other with closeness he once tried to avoid. The blonde boy's expression softened, his intense gaze replaced with calmness as he tried to understand. The long-haired student stared back, still guarded, eyes cautious yet no longer filled with anger or fear. They stood close now, surrounded by open air, yet something fragile and uncertain lingered between them. The blonde boy raised his hand slightly, open and empty. His intent was peaceful, not aggressive. From above, a student landed near them, interrupting quietly as the sky glowed with soft evening light. His eyes widened. Trembling slightly, something sharp had just been said, and it pierced deeper than expected. A sudden gust swept through as his body jolted, muscles tensed, emotion flickering behind his eyes. A single word echoed silently, abomination, cold and cruel, severing the moment like a blade through still air. The golden-haired student stepped forward confidently, dismissive, questioning the point of discussion with narrowed, condescending eyes. The long-haired boy flinched, purple energy sparking as pain and anger surged, no longer held inside. The golden-haired student stepped forward, voice sharp, demanding an answer with an air of superiority. His words twisted cruelly as he looked at the long-haired boy, reducing him to a thing. Reacting instantly, the boy launched forward, body low and fast, an explosion of fury driving his movement. Everyone nearby froze. Shock spread across their faces as eyes locked on what was unfolding. The tension snapped. Electricity crackled suddenly between them, raw power answering the insult that couldn't be taken back. The long-haired boy chuckled dryly, masking tension, as he lightly pushed the blonde to his side. Turning away from the crowd, he whispered firmly, insisting they leave before things spiraled any further. The golden-haired student watched from above, eyes narrowing as he sensed disrespect or threat from below. Leaping down, he landed between them, grabbing the blonde's head, roughly dominance clear in every motion. His voice thundered, anger sharp. The insult was personal now. He wouldn't allow the name Eden to disobey. As the sky blazed orange, Chevelle descended the stairs, eyes locked on the younger student below him. He closed the distance swiftly, fury radiating from his glare as tension crackled in the quiet air. Grabbing the blonde boy's head, Chevelle forced him down, asserting dominance with strength and unspoken warning. The boy didn't resist. He raised his head slowly, defiance flickering in his eyes despite the threat. Chevelle turned away, but the boy's voice followed measured, unshaken, as recognition passed between the two without denial. The boy hesitated, his eyes shifting as he tried to process the tense atmosphere around him. Chevelle lounged confidently on the railing, arms draped around classmates, exuding arrogance as others watched in silence. His sudden movement startled the girl below. Her hand recoiled as he interrupted with a dismissive gesture. He mocked the boy with a smirk, reminding everyone of Helios's class divide and their status gap. Realization dawned in Chevelle's eyes, recognition flickered briefly, his smirk fading as he truly saw the boy's face. Chevelle lashed out, arms swinging in frustration, but the blonde boy blocked him with quiet defiance. Furious, Chevelle leaned closer, demanding answers. His pride bruised, he glared down while others froze behind him. A distant shout echoed suddenly. Heads turned. A girl's voice interrupted the rising tension on the platform. A small paper object glided downward, catching the wind. All eyes followed its quiet, drifting descent. Chevelle's fist clenched. He stepped forward again, tense. The air thickened as confrontation loomed once more. Chevelle toyed with a magic stone, eyes cold, his movements deliberate, commanding attention from everyone nearby. He raised his voice, mocking the group, his words sharp, laced with warning and superiority over them. Wind stirred his coat as he stepped forward. The name Heraes left a chill in the air. The blonde boy stared ahead, recognizing the object. A high-grade magic stone, rare and dangerous in careless hands. Chevelle clenched his fist, charging energy. his stance solid. He demanded they watch, offering no mercy or pause. Chevel's magic surged as radiant lines lit his body. He vowed to show his overwhelming strength. The boys exchanged glances, tense. One asked quietly, "What now?" while the other stayed calm, watching closely. The taller boy gestured subtly, signaling the other to leave. Their unspoken urgency grew with each second. Chevel turned sharply, glaring. He mocked their hushed talk, unaware they were more composed than they seemed. With a burst of light, Chevel invoked power, yet both boys stood unfazed, calmly preparing to counter. The boy analyzed the energy before him, his calm eyes recognizing the formation of a magic spell. He glanced sideways, unsure. Avoiding conflict seemed wiser than drawing attention or making matters worse for everyone. Hesitating, he raised his hand, but the other stepped back, gaze firm, repeating an earlier warning without emotion. Their eyes met again. The blonde boy simply said, "Go." His voice quiet, but completely resolute. As footsteps faded behind him, he turned forward, now alone, prepared to face what came next. The blonde boy narrowed his eyes, sensing the rising threat. His calm expression didn't waver at all. Alone now, he stood still. The others watched from a distance, tension pressing down like thick fog. Chevel laughed mockingly, striding closer with confidence. The others looked on as magic swirled beneath his feet. Chevel's smirk deepened. Time had changed nothing. He still saw the boy as beneath his notice. The silver-haired student spoke up, eyes shaded. He quietly clarified this wasn't his fight, nor his concern. A sudden voice cut the tension, sharp and commanding. The words struck like a blade in silence. A blast of force erupted, shattering the stone railing and sending a surge of magic through air. The impact struck hard. Lidursus staggered, face covered, reeling from the raw power thrown without hesitation. Chevel, empowered and furious, launched himself forward. Lidursus was slammed down with brutal force and no mercy. The blonde boy watched, eyes wide. Chevel grinned darkly, savoring the chaos. This was the nightmare he craved. Lidursus's rage boiled over, power surging through his hand as dark energy lit his glowing purple eye. But in that instant, silence consumed him, vision blurring as his mind was pulled into distant memories. He stood alone in the past, watching the faint silhouette of a girl under moonlight. She turned toward him with a soft smile, gently holding a flower, her voice full of warmth. Her smile lingered. "It's beautiful, right?" The memory burned gently, cutting through the storm within him. Lidursus remembered her standing in the field, the night calm, her presence a moment of peace. But her smile faded into shadow. Eyes surrounded her, monstrous and endless, his memory twisted by fear. The vision shattered. He gasped, clutching his head, overwhelmed by grief and the dark energy within. Chevel stared down coldly, unmoved by the trembling figure before him, power still coursing through his fist. Without hesitation, Chevel struck again. The impact exploded, forceful and final, as others watched in shock and disbelief. Lidursus lay unconscious on the ground. A voice called his name, breaking the heavy silence around them. Chevel stood tall, furious. His magic still crackled faintly as he glared at the one who intervened. The blonde boy remained calm. Chevel's accusation echoed, but he met it with quiet, steady defiance. He spoke evenly, explaining Lidursus had simply been reminded of what he did and who he harmed. Looking down at Lidursus, the boy's voice sharpened. "A monster who forgets deserves punishment to remember." Chevel leaned in, eyes sharp with arrogance. His tone threatened, clearly expecting fear in return. The blonde boy didn't flinch. His calm stare met Chevel's, silent and steady, completely unmoved by intimidation. A heavily armored knight lies defeated, head slumped. Warm light filters in, casting shadows across the hall. A golden-haired boy smirks confidently. Opposite him, a younger student stares sharply, tension thick in the air. A tall figure in a dark cloak stands calmly. The kneeling boy remains still, quietly enduring the pressure. Blurry surroundings suggest psychological strain. Words hit deeper than wounds as past memories stir beneath composed expressions. The golden-haired boy half turns, smiling coldly. His calm face hides intent to unearth something buried and painful. Suspicion rises in the blonde boy's mind as he considers the presence of illusion magic nearby. He connects past events, recalling a monstrous transformation, and suspects someone specific may have orchestrated the scene. A pause in conversation intensifies. The silence speaks volumes as he hints at eliminating the potential threat. Suddenly, a loud voice cuts through. A female student rushes in, followed by alarmed classmates behind her. Annoyed, the golden-haired boy backs off slightly, muttering, while deciding to let the current situation slide barely. Students rush to the scene, concern flooding their faces as they find two bodies on the ground. One speaks shakily. Fidelio, now weakened, struggles to answer, caught off guard by their sudden confrontation's outcome. He stares blankly upward, murmuring that the moment isn't right, something unfinished holds him back. Nearby, the defeated knight slowly awakens, confused and aching, trying to understand what just transpired between them. Unspoken questions linger in the air. What exactly occurred between those two before everything spiraled downward? Outside the room, students whisper curiously, trying to eavesdrop through the closed doors of the meeting room. Inside, a heavy silence fills the space as two seated figures prepare for a tense exchange. A composed student with golden hair calls out, addressing Rude Krishi directly, voice calm but deliberate. He questions Rude's strange behavior, referencing a daring leap from a balcony reported just the day before. Rude denies it flatly. The questioner presses further, citing other reckless acts involving Mr. Artina across campus. Rude responds firmly, denying the accusation. His calm expression reveals nothing as the air grows heavier. The teacher chuckles nervously, trying to keep things light, while background whispers accuse him of spreading lies. He quickly shifts focus, pointing out Rude's delayed school start, using it to explain the physical impossibility. The logic is sound, no healthy body, no wild stunts. Rude listens without revealing a reaction. The teacher confidently asks for agreement. Rude plays along with a light smile, masking the truth beneath. The teacher warns Rude firmly, avoid trouble or risk worsening his condition and damaging his future here. Rude remains silent, processing the implications. The concern isn't for him but how his presence affects others. Later, passing classmates, he notices Ludus nearby. The chance to reconnect feels distant, unreachable, already slipping away. He reflects silently, regretting that things with Ludus are no longer simple. Words are hard to share. Before he can escape deeper thoughts, a voice calls out urgently. Lacus rushes toward him in concern. Lacus approaches Rude quickly, asking what happened. His worry is obvious as he presses for answers. He nervously asks if Rude really fought Chevelle, clearly disturbed by rumors spreading through the academy. Rude responds calmly, confirming only that they met, showing no concern for how it might be interpreted. Lacus blurts out the wild rumor Rude was beaten badly while playing around with Lord Artian nearby. Still calm, Rude brushes off the drama. Lacus presses again, worried about injury, but Rude assures him, fine. Rude lowers his gaze, pausing briefly. Something weighs on his mind as he begins to speak carefully. He solemnly declares that Leducis is dead, but immediately corrects himself, clarifying the truth with flat certainty. Lacus reacts with shock and confusion, unable to reconcile Rude's serious tone with the sudden contradiction. Rude scolds him lightly for overreacting, insisting Leducis is perfectly fine despite the grim expression moments before. Without further explanation, Rude walks ahead, saying they'll talk later. Lacus follows hesitantly, unsure where they're even going. Rude glances forward with quiet determination, his destination clear now as the next step becomes unavoidable. Their path leads toward a distant place under open skies somewhere connected to the name Leducis. They arrive at the infirmary, unsure if Leducis is still inside. Silence greets them through the door. Lacus suggests checking the classroom again, thinking they may have crossed paths without realizing it in passing. Rude hesitates, expression unreadable. Waiting might be safer, but deep down, something tells him it's already too late. Lacus gestures around the storage room confidently, assuring Rude there's no one there, just empty crates and shadows. Suddenly, both freeze. Their eyes widen in unison as a presence makes itself known from the dark. They both spot someone crouched among the boxes. Shock hits them instantly as they realize who it is. "It's him!" Lacus gasps. Rude remains still, focused, knowing this strange behavior confirms more than words could. Rude steps forward, asking Leducis calmly why he's there and if he's seriously digging into the floor. Leducis stands in silence behind a door, conflicted, unsure whether to engage or keep hiding away. Rude calmly agrees to speak, Sensing this chance might not come again if it's left to fade, he offers candy casually, lightening the tension, though the gesture catches Lacus completely off guard. Rude slowly approaches, urging Leducis to ignore the monstrous rumors that have been circulating through the academy. His voice sharpens slightly. He wants answers now. Why did Leducis truly transform that day in the library? Rude questions softly if Chevelle truly called Leducis a monster, probing gently at the sensitive truth. Leducis, shaken, mutters defensively. His voice trembles as shadows of memory and pain stir inside him. Frustrated, he snaps, what people say doesn't matter. It's none of Rude's concern, so stay out. Leducis's voice rises with emotion. He demands to be left alone, not pitied, not protected anymore. His final plea cuts deep. Stop caring, stop approaching, and above all, stop looking at him like that. Lacus stands, observing Leducis's withdrawn posture. The dim lighting reflects the weight of unspoken pain between them. Rude approaches cautiously, stepping between crates. Leducis remains seated on the floor, slouched in visible emotional exhaustion. A faint response escapes Leducis as his head lowers further, shoulders curled inward like shielding from the world. Darkness surrounds him as he hides behind trembling hands, fully consumed by internal guilt and a shattered image. His fingers part slightly, eyes red and unfocused. The silence between them grows heavier than any word. Leducis quietly accepts the situation, his posture straighter now, yet the weight behind his eyes lingers. He grips his chest faintly, as if calming nerves. His silence speaks more than any answer could. Rude gazes at a button pin, thoughtful. If words won't come, action might bring the truth. Leducis reacts with surprise, caught off guard by Rude's calm suggestion to ask Chevelle directly instead. Bathed in sunlight, Rude smiles lightly, but behind it lies firm resolve to uncover the truth himself. Leducis stares blankly, his expression unreadable. A mix of realization and confusion flickers across his face. Sky transitions into warm evening hues. Time passes and the scene shifts to another place entirely. Outside, golden buildings glow under the sunset as quiet discussion reveals new details about Rude Krishi. Chevelle listens skeptically. He questions Rude's background, doubting the story of weakness and delayed school entry. The conversation continues calmly. A balcony meeting reveals Rude's unusual traits, especially his flawless score on the entrance exam. Chevelle reacts sharply to the new information, his pride wounded by Rude's silent excellence and sudden presence. He scoffs at the praise, mocking Rude's behavior and dismissing his high scores as meaningless arrogance. A calm voice asks what to do next. The tension rises behind their composed, calculating expressions. Chevelle answers with a smirk, intent clear. Rude must not be allowed to rise any further. Back inside, a mysterious black energy begins curling around the floor, signaling that something dark is already moving. A glowing pendant slipped from the robe, catching the last rays of light as dusk fell. From the balcony, a dark mist suddenly swirled out, its form moving with silent urgency and purpose. The shadow glided past thick bushes, weaving through the garden unnoticed, chasing something only it could sense. Leaves rustled violently as the dark figure accelerated, vanishing across the twilight sky without leaving a trace. A gloved hand gripped the railing tightly, alarmed eyes staring at the space the shadow just crossed. He narrowed his eyes, sensing a strange disturbance. Something had just passed but left no trace. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Tessie shouted playfully, drawing attention to a wobbly stack of pancakes nearby. Rom scolded gently, reminding her not to play with food, still formal even in their relaxed setting. Tessie protested with a pout, claiming her name excused it, while Rom maintained his calm correction with patience. He reached for the plate, clarifying again this wasn't Tessie, just breakfast, and the girl sighed in defeat. She held the biscuit silently, eyes calm but thoughtful, watching him while the golden light bathed everything. Under the moonlit sky, a voice reached Rude through crystal, asking gently about his school life. The crystal pulsed softly as Rude sat quietly, his gaze distant, avoiding the question about friends. He whispered to his master that the client's wish conflicted with what Lidris truly needed. Rude explained how Lidris pushed him away, asking to be left alone, drowning in self-hatred. Perched alone on the roof, Rude confessed helplessness, uncertain how to help someone refusing all connection. Rude hesitated, asking softly if he should step back, uncertain if staying would truly help. His master's voice surged through the crystal, pleading he couldn't quit now, not when it mattered most. Rude lowered his gaze, unsure of what to believe. Maybe Lidris didn't want help after all. He admitted that Lidris likely hid pain too deep for words secrets he couldn't share with anyone. The students weren't normal. They watched coldly, whispering cruel names as if united in silent hatred. Rude recalled a name, Chevelle von Hadelio, a senior student likely behind Lidris's cruel treatment. The crystal pulsed again. Surprised, the voice asked if Rude knew him. Chevelle's reputation clearly carried weight. Rude answered without hesitation. Of course, he knew the name more than just a troublesome upperclassman. The Hadelio family held great influence, known for birthing elite magicians and wielding immense political sway. Their patriarch, Marquis Hadelio, maintained strong, noble ties, often central in decisions shaping the capital's power. Rude listened silently, piecing together the tangled rivalry between Marquis Hadelio and Duke Artian's families. He realized Lidris might be targeted simply because of bloodline's rivalry disguised as personal conflict. Rude mused aloud. Maybe Lidris suffered for reasons unrelated to any fault of his own. Perhaps it wasn't hatred, but loss, or jealousy that provoked Chevelle's actions against someone already so isolated. The crystal offered a soft chuckle, urging Rude not to burden himself with too much seriousness. Rude's master gently reminded him, their mission mattered, but so did living, making friends, enjoying school life. The voice encouraged him further, hinting again that Rude could start by simply opening up more. But before the sentence finished, Rude snapped shut the channel, rising with an unreadable look. He stood there silently, the words lingering in his mind like an echo he didn't answer. Then, with a quiet step, he turned away from the crystal, vanishing into the rooftop shadows. Rude repeated the phrase quietly bad terms, still unsure how deeply this rivalry truly affected Lidris. Alone again, he reflected silently under moonlight, deciding he needed to watch and understand Lidris better. A new day broke, sun piercing through the clouds, casting bright light over a distant coastline. Waves danced below towering cliffs as a serene breeze swept through a hidden corner of the island. Somewhere nearby, a firm hand gripped a rail, another figure stepping into the scene with unknown intent. The man exhaled slowly, stepping onto the balcony, suit immaculate, irritation faintly written on his face. He muttered to himself, wondering why Ruby Monterre had chosen such a remote place to settle down. With a glance around, he scoffed. He truly believed she lacked any sense of practical decision-making. Walking along the rail, he reached out, fingertips brushing cool stone as he sighed in frustration. He mused aloud, if that fiery kid wanted to survive here, he'd better cool his temper. Startled by something behind the door, he flinched, an unexpected noise jolting him out of thought. A moment later, his mood completely changed. With arms raised, he cheerfully announced his grand entrance. "Miss Ruby! Cutie Ruby!" he called out dramatically, beaming as if on stage, voice echoing with flair. Instead of a response, a strange purple creature emerged, startling him mid-performance and halting the cheer. Scratching his head, he sighed, glancing around the empty room. "Looks like she's not around today." The large purple creature calmly informed him that Miss Ruby Monterre had stepped out for a while. Surprised but intrigued, Elzebul admitted the human world felt livelier than he had originally expected. He raised a brow, asking sarcastically if the creature had actually swum all the way here. The creature scowled, offended by the tone, especially when accused of smelling like the ocean's worst corner. Elzebul crossed his arms, scolding the creature for ignoring Ruby's request to stay in human form. Elzebul chuckled, sympathizing being dropped into a room unexpectedly was bound to irritate anyone, even fish. Still smiling, he encouraged the creature to enjoy its time in the human realm while it could. The creature narrowed its eye, firmly stating it wasn't here for fun like Elzebul seemed to be. But Elzebul suddenly lunged forward with playful intent, declaring he couldn't leave a colleague annoyed and miserable. Startled, the creature flailed as Elzebul wrestled it down, promising to help release its bottled frustration. The large purple creature was suddenly lifted off the ground, limbs flailing in total shocked confusion. Elzebul hurled the creature off the balcony with force, aiming it directly toward the distant sea. The creature spun helplessly through the air before crashing into the ocean with a massive splash. Foam surged outward as waves rippled violently from the impact, sunlight glittering against the churning water. Elzebul remained on the balcony, satisfied, hands resting on his hips as he admired the splash. A purple-haired figure emerged from the water, soaked and furious, his sharp gaze fixed on shore. Water dripped from his chin as he glared upward, clearly recognizing who had thrown him in. Standing on the cliff, Elzebel remained unfazed while the other approached, irritation clear in his posture. One boot stepped forward. Another person had arrived, watching the escalating scene from above with silent intent. Overlooking the sparkling waves, the newcomer observed everything from a rooftop ledge, body tense, expression unreadable. A horned figure appeared, stern and composed, golden eyes narrowing as they questioned the disruptive commotion. Their sharp tone carried authority, reminding everyone of rules that had clearly been ignored or forgotten. With a steady hand, they pulled a sealed letter from their coat, revealing something significant inside. A brief smirk crossed their face as their eyes scanned the document's contents with quiet satisfaction. The message confirmed their success infiltration complete as the view shifted to the grand campus of Helios Academy. A student rushed down the academy hall, calling out with urgency, her face tense and confused. The man she approached turned slowly, revealing tired eyes and disheveled hair beneath scholarly composure. She paused a few steps away, breath catching as she noticed the seriousness in his gaze. Gesturing vaguely, she asked about a missing professor, glancing around as concern etched into her expression. The professor gave no reply, only adjusting his glasses and clutching a book slightly tighter than before. The professor lowered his hand in silence, deep in thought as tension hung between the two. He shifted the conversation, guiding the student toward an intricate glowing circle embedded in the floor. The student's eyes widened at the sight, marveling at the complex array of magical runes beneath them. Professor Hale gave a faint nod, quietly acknowledging his handiwork without pride, only calculated certainty. Together they stood before the portal, the chamber's light reflecting off polished tiles and golden enchantments. Dale glanced at his colleague, mentioning the upcoming field trip involving the Magic Tower this year. As they approached the hall, his eyes widened, marveling at the massive teleportation crystal glowing ahead. He grinned with anticipation, thinking how incredible the journey would be thanks to the teleportation circle. But Felix reminded him sternly that thorough preparation was essential to avoid chaos or potential magical backlash. Admiring Felix's composure, Dale nodded, calling him awesome as the tension eased with a shared laugh. Dio slammed a thick blue folder on the desk, drawing immediate attention from the silent blonde student. Lifting his eyes, the boy stared blankly at the document, uncertain what it was meant to be. Dio proudly declared it held precious intel he'd gathered alone, his tone serious despite his slumped posture. Surprised, the blonde asked if it was all compiled today. Dio sighed, recalling the exhausting effort involved. The boy flipped through the pages, impressed each name listed was capable of countering the threat of Chevelle. Dio explained his list wasn't random, it focused on nobles and top-performing students with proven power. The blonde boy paused, uncertain. His silence made Dio flustered, thinking his effort wasn't being appreciated. Dio defended his work passionately, frustrated yet earnest, insisting he had poured everything into gathering this data. The blonde admitted he wasn't doubting the effort, just unsure how useful the information would actually be. Nearby, a green-haired girl tensed. When asked what was wrong, she hesitated, quietly muttering, "Nothing." Dio exclaimed with confidence, insisting 2 people on the list were absolutely certain to be helpful. Opening the file, he pointed to their names with pride, his voice filled with undeniable certainty. The first was Utiarnan Maria Canziol, instantly recognizable as a noble of direct lineage and immense status. He emphasized her prestige, noting her name alone signified power, supported by elite magical heritage and talent. Dio grinned, recalling her flawless exam records and cold demeanor. She was sharp, precise, and definitely not ordinary. Nervously, Dio whispered about being overheard, only to be reminded loudly they could hear everything he said. Across the room, students exchanged glances, suspicious of Dio's table, wondering if they were plotting something serious. One student complained, annoyed by Rude's presence, claiming peace had vanished since the so-called monster arrived. Frustrated, another girl muttered that they weren't the victims people were choosing to involve themselves with him. The green-haired girl, Rin, answered calmly when asked. She simply agreed, her gaze steady and unconvinced. The blonde boy glanced at Rin, thoughtful, then turned back to Dio, asking about the second name. Noticing the interaction across the room, his curiosity grew. He wanted to know who else Dio meant. Dio responded confidently, declaring the second person on his list was Lapis Yuen Nuadli. Lapis, being the only son of the Nuadli Duchy, possessed notable sway even inside the academy. Though both he and Artian were Duke's sons, Lapis stood alone as his family's sole heir. Dio emphasized how difficult it was to gather this intel, especially regarding Lapis and his past ties. He revealed Lapis and Chevelle had entered together, though rumors said their relationship soured early on. Hearing this, the blonde boy saw potential. If Lapis disliked Chevelle, approaching him might be easier. Dio agreed but hesitated, pointing out one major issue. Lapis had never advanced beyond the Eden rank. Surprised, the blonde asked why, and Dio quietly responded it was because Lapis just wasn't strong enough. Lapis excelled in theory and academics, often ranking highest but faltered when it came to practical application. Despite limited magical talent, his noble status and rivalry with Chevelle still made him a potential asset. The blonde boy acknowledged Dio's effort, recognizing how deeply he had investigated students like Lapis. Dio admitted struggling to reach top-class students. Hertzrain's group was isolated, difficult to approach, and tightly guarded. Frustrated but determined, Dio placed the report down firmly, as others nearby watched the discussion unfold. A sharp clap echoed through the room, silencing chatter as everyone turned toward the front. Two students stood before the lecture hall, commanding attention with a calm but serious presence. Rin and her classmate whispered, surprised to see Clad taking charge in front of everyone. He announced he was relaying a message from Professor Ewens regarding a sudden schedule change. Instead of normal lessons, all students were to begin preparations for upcoming practical training sessions. With a composed expression, the blonde student stood and addressed the room, gathering everyone's full attention. Clad stepped forward smoothly, smiling as he politely instructed everyone to begin moving toward the next task. Though calm outwardly, the blonde student internally grumbled he wasn't thrilled about participating in this training. As the classroom emptied, he sat still, thoughts drifting to someone specific. Lidursus. Brows furrowed slightly, he wondered in silence, where is this guy now? A blast of water crashed against the wall, leaving a student drenched and collapsed in silence. Dripping wet, he coughed and leaned back weakly, barely reacting as three boys approached with mocking smiles. They sneered, calling him a wet rat, mocking his title with cruel laughter and hollow politeness. One leaned in closer, reminding him coldly his situation hadn't improved just because others showed mild support. As they turned away smugly, the boy clenched his fists and muttered the name, Manon. Manon reminded his group their mission wasn't just to bully, it had a far greater purpose. Startled, one of the boys stammered, realizing he may have misunderstood the gravity of their actions. With a cold stare, Manon issued the command, unshaken by the cruelty behind his calm words. "Drag the monster," he ordered flatly, signaling this was more than punishment, it was a prepared spectacle. He smiled faintly, declaring that the stage was ready, his voice filled with dark satisfaction. Rude was called out loudly, his name echoing as his friend approached with weary frustration. The boy slumped, suggesting they give up. They had searched everywhere and done all they possibly could. He listed the dormitories, emphasizing how thoroughly they'd checked without finding any useful lead or result. Storage rooms were combed through as well, but they turned up just as empty and useless. Even the outer areas beyond school walls offered nothing. Their efforts, it seemed, had all been wasted. Dio panicked, exclaiming that Lord Ardian was missing and they were already late for class. The blonde boy stayed calm, scanning the area silently while Dio rambled in rising frustration. They confirmed Ardian had attended morning class, so he must be hiding somewhere now, intentionally or not. Dio pleaded they head to class first. He couldn't risk losing points for another late arrival. Sighing, the blonde agreed, still scanning nearby bushes, joking that Artian might be unconscious or asleep somewhere ridiculous. As he entered the hall, the blonde student paused. Something about the atmosphere felt strangely off. The room was crowded and noisy, but it lacked the usual presence of calm direction. Students murmured in confusion, wondering where the professor was and why class hadn't begun properly. They noticed the professor was missing, replaced by unfamiliar authority, the ones known as the Clads. Everyone fell silent, uneasy tension thickening as the Clads took position before the gathering crowd. Two Clads stood at the front of a grand hall, confirming the presence of the selected students. With a confident nod, the lead-clad gave a signal, initiating something planned and possibly orchestrated. At that same moment, in a separate classroom, rows of desks remained eerily vacant and untouched. Professor Heinel, standing alone at the front, looked around the empty room in stunned confusion. Realizing no one had arrived for his lecture, he muttered in disbelief, completely unaware of the unfolding scheme. Sunlight filtered through the treetops as Rude stood silently, blending into the calm and leafy surroundings. He turned his head slightly, uneasy about the locked lecture hall that stood unusually silent behind him. Dio approached through the bushes, confused by the secrecy and the unnecessary security placed on the classroom. Without a word, Rude crouched and brushed aside foliage, revealing a hidden entrance embedded in the garden wall. The opening was small and low. Understanding the situation, they prepared to crawl through without hesitation. The grand lecture hall stood silent and vast, sunlight pouring in through tall windows above the students. Students sat attentively while instructors lined up in front, each carrying mysterious items concealed in cloth. One instructor raised a glowing mana sphere, showing its smooth surface as light shimmered across the room. He explained that without a mana sphere, trainees were forbidden from practicing any kind of magical spell. Crates filled with spheres were unveiled beside him as he announced a special class on mana activation. The instructor calmly declared the purpose of the session, evaluating each student's mana manifestation ability under observation. Confusion spread through the room as students raised their voices, clearly unprepared for a surprise practical test. A nervous student asked if the main professor had approved this, but received only silence in return. Some students stood hesitantly, forming groups, unsure whether to follow instructions or wait for further confirmation. Rude remained quiet, watching everything unfold, unsure what this unexpected test meant or who had arranged it. A loud outburst startled nearby students as one girl shouted in protest, clearly upset by the announcement. Whispers and glances spread quickly, confusion and fear mixing among students unsure of what to do. The instructor raised his voice, signaling order, demanding attention before anyone else interrupted the session again. He challenged the class, asking if anyone else had concerns or objections to the planned exercise. Silence followed. Students looked away nervously, not daring to speak, while some exchanged cautious, uncertain glances. The instructor, satisfied with the silence, moved forward and began explaining the rules for the demonstration. He introduced the mana spheres, emphasizing their use strictly for testing magical control and not real combat. Lifting a glowing green sphere, he described how its color shifts according to a student's manifested skill. He clarified that stronger mana flow would make the sphere shine brighter and reflect greater magical ability. In summary, the more precise and intense the output, the more vivid the sphere would become. The instructor warned that most students would barely change the sphere's color, especially at their current level. Instead of color alone, students would be evaluated based on the force generated through the mana sphere. He announced the testing method, target practice, surprising many as large boards were rolled onto the floor. The targets were reinforced with special materials, designed to withstand anything not charged with real mana energy. Students were instructed to activate the sphere's magic and throw it forward, aiming directly at the target. The instructor concluded the briefing, stating the day's only task was striking the target with mana. Students murmured nervously, confused by the instructions, and unclear if he meant aiming directly at the assistant. Whispers grew louder as realization struck. He expected them to throw the mana sphere at a person. With a smirk, the instructor added a twist. Bonus points would go to those hitting the head. Holding up a sphere, he pointed confidently toward the target's forehead, raising the challenge without hesitation. With a sharp snap of his fingers, the instructor signaled the start of the evaluation session. A line of mana spheres rolled across the floor, stopping at the feet of waiting students. Hesitation filled the room as none moved forward, unsure who would dare take the first attempt. The instructor looked over the crowd with steady eyes, clearly waiting for someone to step forward confidently. After a short silence, he repeated the question, challenging them directly. Now then, who wants to go first? The instructors looked around confused, as they noticed that one of their key students was missing. Panic quickly followed when they confirmed that Manon, expected on stage, had vanished without anyone noticing. Tension escalated as accusations flew, and one instructor cursed aloud, furious over the sudden disappearance. Meanwhile, outside the hall, Rude and Dio wandered cluelessly, completely unaware of the unfolding classroom chaos. Rude turned to Dio with a puzzled look, casually asking if the class had already started. Dio suddenly grabbed Rude's shoulder, urging him to return inside as urgency sparked across his expression. Rude paused at the door, eyes glowing faintly, realizing something serious must have gone terribly wrong inside. His companions stared back quietly, clearly sensing Rude's change but unsure what thoughts ran through his mind. Meanwhile, silence fell in the hall as the lead instructor stood tense, processing the unfolding situation. A nearby assistant stepped closer, nervously asking Manon what their next action should be in response. Manon muttered firmly that they were too far in, insisting they proceed and follow the plan. Internally, he regretted not informing Chevelle, realizing the situation was now diverging from what he expected. Despite his doubts, he signaled to resume, as students hesitantly picked up the manospheres. A quiet student held the sphere silently, her expression unreadable amid the rising murmurs around her. From the stage, Manon asked again who would go first, his tone shifting toward pressure and consequence. With no volunteers stepping forward, the assistant pointed toward a girl clutching her hands nervously together. She froze as he confirmed the choice, asking her to step up and take a sphere. The girl remained silent, her expression tight with fear while students nearby watched without offering support. Trembling slightly, she finally spoke, admitting she couldn't do it, her voice soft but filled with dread. The assistant's tone darkened as he implied replacing the target with her, forcing fear into the group. Frozen in place, the girl stared forward, unable to process the pressure mounting against her will. Her voice shook as she asked for help, hoping someone nearby would speak up or intervene. But the others averted their eyes, unwilling to share the risk or challenge the instructor's command. Swallowing her fear, she stepped forward slowly, clutching the monosphere tightly with trembling, sweaty hands. The assistant smiled coldly, assuring her she knew what to do next, despite her paralyzing uncertainty. The girl held the monosphere tightly as a faint glow pulsed, barely shifting its color tone. Observing the weak reaction, the assistant casually noted the minimal color change but allowed her to continue. He pointed toward the restrained figure on the target board, preparing her for the final step. Since she was the first participant, he offered full credit if she could simply hit the target. Her breath caught in her throat as he referred to the bound figure as the monster. The assistant leaned forward slightly, voice calm but sharp, commanding her to throw the manosphere now. Her eyes trembled under pressure, and with a sudden gasp, she hurled the glowing orb forward. The sphere soared through the air, a faint trail of light following its unstable, magical energy. It landed far off target, bouncing harmlessly across the floor, stopping short of the intended mark. Silence followed, and the assistant stared blankly, clearly unimpressed by the failed attempt and her hesitation. The assistant announced her disqualification coldly, offering no encouragement as she stepped away, visibly shaken and ashamed. With growing concern, he muttered about the situation slipping off course and needing to restore control quickly. He turned to another student and ordered him to demonstrate a proper throw for the entire class. The confident boy raised his monosphere, activated it smoothly, and launched it with force and precision. The sphere struck the restrained target directly, a burst of magical impact, flashing across the monster's chest. The successful throw rolled to a stop after impact, the glowing manosphere losing its light. Watching in stunned silence, the students began whispering among themselves, clearly shaken by the brutal demonstration. The assistant praised the result loudly, reinforcing the method and urging others to follow that example. He smiled confidently, asking who among them had the courage to step up and go next. Hidden from view, Rude clenched his teeth, anger flaring as he muttered about their twisted behavior. Dio shouted for Rude to hurry and fetch the professor, but Rude had already disappeared. The assistant paused, raising his hand mid-sentence, confused by the sudden shift in the room's energy. Silence stretched for a moment before a calm voice broke through the tension from the crowd. All eyes turned as the blonde-haired boy stood tall, volunteering himself without hesitation or fear. His words were firm as he raised his hand and said clearly, "I'll try next." Bright lights streamed through stained glass as a figure stepped forward. Silence filled the room, attention sharpening. A blonde student confidently raised his hand. The crowd around him murmured, surprised by his sudden eagerness. Behind the door, Rude peeked out. His eyes widened in alarm as he recognized the boy volunteering. Several students turned sharply toward the noise. One glared with suspicion while another narrowed his eyes in warning. A silver-haired student froze, sweat beaded on his face. The situation was shifting, and tension gripped his chest. The blond boy faced forward, expression calm. Light caught his hair, making him stand out among peers. The hall remained silent. All eyes faced the stage, tension growing as instructors waited for movement below. Students shifted slightly in their seats. One recognized the name, his eyes narrowed, shoulders stiff with alert caution. Another group whispered, puzzled by the decision. Their gazes trailed toward the lone student now rising slowly. The examiner hesitated, then motioned him forward. Uncertainty filled the air as the quiet scene finally began unfolding. The instructor pointed toward the target, inviting him to begin. Rude stepped forward under the focused gazes. Another student explained calmly, giving instructions with a smile. Confidence lingered in his voice, unaware of coming surprise. Without hesitation, the spell was cast. A swift motion followed, glowing energy slicing forward with deadly accuracy. The student blinked in disbelief. His eyes widened as he saw the result, completely shocked by the impact. The magical barrier cracked violently. Energy burst outward. Behind him, gasps echoed, others stared, stunned by the overwhelming force. A silver-haired student turned his head slightly, sensing something. His eyes narrowed, focus shifting toward the source. From the hallway, Rude gasped. His expression was filled with shock, unable to believe what he just witnessed. Cracks spread across the impact zone. Debris floated midair as magical force pulsed dangerously around the silver-haired boy. Chains wrapped tightly around his arms. He stood motionless, surrounded by raw energy, staring coldly at the target. The blond boy scratched his head, looking disappointed. His casual gesture contrasted sharply with the chaos around him. Rude lowered his hand calmly. "I missed," he said, while others stared in disbelief at the destruction. One student stepped back, stunned, his brows furrowed as he whispered, "No way." Realizing something felt deeply wrong. The silver-haired student looked down, arms still bound, his expression tightened, reacting not to pain but unexpected release. Chains loosened slightly from the blast's force. Dust floated around him as silence fell over the room. Without hesitation, he reached for the object beside him. His fingers closed around it with firm determination. Rude held the orb with a blank face. "Too bad," he muttered, eyes scanning the reaction around. He raised it again, calmly asking for another chance. His tone remained casual, but energy pulsed in a hand. The glowing orb flared unnaturally. His gaze sharpened as power surged. Onlookers froze, sensing something dangerously unstable. Suddenly the orb shattered midair. Green shards scattered everywhere. Students stared wide-eyed, fear overtaking their confusion instantly. A nervous laugh echoed. "It must have been defective," one mumbled. Others silently panicked. "If he hits, I'll die." The older student flinched backward, alarmed by the sudden movement. His breath caught, unsure how to react. Power surged in the silver-haired boy's hand. His expression remained cold, aura pulsing with growing magical pressure. Energy crackled in the air. Students stared wide-eyed, tense as the glowing sphere spun rapidly in Rude's grip. With a blinding flash, the spell launched. The crowd screamed, ducking as magical force tore through the platform. The target rolled aside just in time. Eyes wide, he watched the explosion engulf where he'd stood. Sweat formed on one student's brow. His face tightened, trying to understand the overwhelming force unfolding ahead. The crowd gasped. Green-haired students clutched their chests, eyes wide. No one expected it to escalate this far. Chains rattled as the silver-haired boy strained forward. His breath quickened, unsure what would come next. The projectile struck with brutal precision. A green flash erupted. The student took the full hit without blocking. Eyes narrowed. The silver-haired boy watched the impact. Shock flickered in his expression. This wasn't part of the plan. The impact sent the student flying backward. His glasses slipped as light faded briefly from his vision. He collapsed on the floor, motionless. The crowd stared in stunned silence, unsure whether to speak or move. From across the arena, Rude blinked once. "My bad," he muttered, casually brushing dust from his sleeve. The silver-haired boy watched from behind, still chained. His expression darkened. Why was he hit instead of me? Hidden nearby, Rude's friend whispered in disbelief. His voice trembled faintly, calling out, "Rude!" As tension rose again, hidden behind the curtain, Rude's friend whispered in awe. His eyes widened at the display of power. The silver-haired boy stood silently among peers. Tension lingered, but he watched Rude with a curious expression. Crimson eyes followed Rude's figure from a distance. Recognition flickered. This wasn't just another reckless student showing off. A few students turned to look back, uncertain. Rude stood alone at the center, expression unreadable. Another student clenched his jaw, shocked. His thoughts spiraled. What is this kid really capable of doing? The instructor stared at the target in disbelief. The magic had pierced straight through without leaving damage. His mind raced. Even I couldn't scratch that thing. That color, it's nearly identical to forbidden magic. Conflicted thoughts churned. Was it a trick? No. The raw pressure felt far too real to fake. He studied Rude from afar. A single, unnerving question echoed in his thoughts. What exactly is that boy? Meanwhile, another student observed the shattered field. The platform cracked, the target knocked off center by sheer magical force. The arena quieted as attention shifted. A staff member stepped in to assess the shattered, broken field. Students stiffened. One nervously stepped forward, glancing around, unsure whether this change meant relief or further unexpected chaos. Rude turned slowly, eyes scanning the gathered crowd. His expression remained neutral, but his gaze was calculating. He looked toward the responsible student. Without words, tension grew. The group realized someone was being silently challenged. Another student's face paled. Rude's gaze now rested on him, calm, cold, and clearly choosing his next target. Rude calmly raised the orb again. His fingers curled around it as pressure quietly returned to the air. The instructor tensed. He knew Rude wasn't joking. All eyes turned toward him, expecting a decision immediately. Rude stepped forward slowly. His calm posture masked challenge. The silence dared someone to stop or oppose him. Whispers broke out. Another student hesitated, then called out nervously. Faces turned as tensions spiked across the arena. The instructor finally snapped. Eyes glowing red, he shouted, anger masking fear. He'd make the choice himself this time. The silver-haired boy's gaze sharpened. He sensed the shift, something irreversible had just been set in motion. The instructor's furious voice rang out. All heads turned toward Rude, who met the outburst with eerie calm. Chaos broke loose. Students began moving in unison, ordered to capture Rude as tension snapped into action. Behind the pillar, Rude's friend gasped. Fear gripped him. He realized Rude was about to face them alone. He pushed off the wall to intervene, but something yanked him back sharply, interrupting his desperate decision to act. A firm hand grabbed his shoulder. The blue-haired professor appeared silently, gaze steady, and presence commanding attention. Rude's friend looked up in shock. His voice trembled as he recognized the figure Professor Rowell had arrived. Rowell stepped in silently, grabbing the boy's shoulder before he could shout and draw attention inside. The boy turned in shock, whispering thanks. Rowell's cold eyes scanned the hallway with precise awareness. He pulled the student aside, shielding him with his cloak. "Be quiet," he said, voice sharp. The boy obeyed but whispered again, confused. Rowell peered through the door's opening without saying a word. The professor narrowed his eyes, speaking softly. "Watching." His tone was firm. Something suspicious was happening beyond view. "Watching?" the boy blurted out, startled. His voice rose before he could stop himself in panic. Rowell swiftly covered the boy's mouth, his glare sharp. The hallway was no place for noise. A distant sound echoed muffled cries. Rowell's expression turned serious as he held the boy close and still. With calm precision, Rowell tilted his head toward the noise. Something inside the room had caught attention. His eyes narrowed, alert. A sudden movement within the chamber made his instincts spike with silent urgency. A sharp blow landed on the brown-haired boy's face, his body jolting backward from the intense impact. He hit the ground hard, tumbling across the floor as a glowing green orb rolled away. The blonde student stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on the orb, tension visible in every cautious movement. Before he could move further, multiple students reacted swiftly, bodies shifting to block his path completely. Several hands grabbed him tightly from all sides, forcing him back, holding him still with overwhelming strength. One student lunged in, confident he had the target secure, fingers tightening around the blonde's shoulder. A sudden counterattack exploded from the blonde student. his elbow smashing hard into the attacker's jawline and cheek. The surrounding crowd froze, stunned by the unexpected retaliation. His movement had broken their formation in seconds. Another student stumbled backward, knocked off balance as his grip loosened, and the blonde twisted free smoothly. The blonde leapt forward, body low and fast. Behind him, another student crashed to the ground hard. The blonde student paused briefly as another boy grabbed him, their eyes locking in tense confrontation. Without hesitation, the blonde leaned in and spoke calmly, his voice low and direct in tone. His sudden movement startled the other boy, who stepped back in alarm, face tight with disbelief. Remaining composed, the blonde stated his mood coldly. His warning hung heavy in the air between them. Bodies lay unconscious across the floor. The blonde stood alone in the center, unbothered by surrounding stares. A nearby group stood silently, watching the chaos unfold, their expressions tense and uncertain in the background. The green-haired girl glanced sideways, her eyes narrowing slightly as a question formed on her lips. A startled reaction followed, one boy's face tightening as if realizing something he should have anticipated earlier. Two students walked together, one asking about the orbs while the other responded cautiously and carefully. The first student snapped, frustrated. He demanded proper magic orbs, not test versions scattered across the field. A nervous officer trembles before his superior, reporting only the presence of discarded experimental magic remnants. Frustration builds as the superior clenches his fist, disappointed by the lack of useful intelligence gathered. Meanwhile, another observer focuses on a new target, Rude Krishi, recognizing hidden strength behind his calm expression. The students prepare to engage. Their leader rallies them to strike, forming a unified challenge against Rude. With a bright magical orb thrown, the test begins. Rude now stands alone against many opponents. A bold student charges forward, encouraged by promised rewards, aiming to defeat Rude in a single strike. Fueled by jealousy and pride, he imagines wiping Rude's calm expression off the battlefield completely. Unshaken, Rude watches the attack unfold, his gaze cool and calculating amidst the rising tension around him. He gracefully evades, foot tapping the orb mid-motion, showing flawless control and unmatched reaction time. The attacker is struck and collapses instantly. Rude remains still, glowing orb in hand, calm and victorious. Gasps ripple through the crowd as a student collapses, hit while another unexpectedly shields the blow. Rude calmly supports the injured student, revealing a rare glimpse of compassion beneath his usual stoic demeanor. The saved student, shocked and confused, asks why Rude intervened, receiving no answer, only quiet resolve. Another student screams in rage, unable to comprehend Rude's strength. His pride twists into uncontrollable hatred. He shouts orders furiously. Students hesitate, overwhelmed. Some ready their magic, driven by fear more than courage. A student points at Rude and the injured boy. Their alliance becomes the new group target immediately. Rude quietly checks his classmate for injuries. Despite everything, he still takes responsibility for his safety. Meanwhile, students regroup, each gripping magic orbs, readying to strike as they shift targets with renewed focus. More opponents step forward, alert and cautious. They understand Rude's skill, but numbers might finally overwhelm him. Rude questions his classmate's passive stance. Frustration thinly veiled, confused why someone would endure pain without resistance. Flustered, the blonde boy denies enjoying the abuse. Shocked by Rude's blunt yet concerned question, Rude relaxes slightly, reassured. His teasing tone fades, replaced by something more serious beneath his gaze. He challenges the boy's earlier words, questioning the logic of risking himself when he shouldn't care. Crossing his arms, Rude makes a point. Fairness means mutual indifference, not one-sided protection or guilt. But the boy can't agree, haunted by guilt. He blames himself for danger others suffer in silence. The blue-haired attacker launches another orb, but it's swiftly intercepted, blocked before it can reach its mark. Rude's classmate steps forward, arm raised, catching the magical orb mid-air with firm, focused determination. Rude glances sideways, surprised. His voice is calm but stern, questioning the boy's spiral of self-blame. He clarifies softly, the pain others cause isn't his fault, it belongs to the ones attacking him. Clutching the glowing orb, the boy admits his truth, not weakness, but fury. He hates oppressors deeply. He stepped forward as chaos stirred behind. The others watched, tense, unsure what he'd do next. Magic gathered in his hand. His face stayed cold, gaze fixed, emotions hidden behind controlled breath. The two boys panicked, hastily raising their arms. One yelled the command, energy trembling in fear. The orb launched violently, green light tearing through the air, but the aim wavered with uncertainty. He tilted slightly, effortlessly dodging. The spell missed. His sharp stare followed. Calmly, he judged their weakness. He calmly bent down, picked up a magic orb, and took position. The crowd went silent. With one precise throw, the orb struck its mark, exploding on contact, scattering fragments across the floor. He didn't pause. Another orb was thrown instantly, his movements sharp, his eyes locked on targets. The second enemy collapsed in pain. One remaining attacker clenched his teeth, anger rising with glowing hands. But as he charged, his expression twisted. Something felt wrong. Power surged near too fast to dodge. His expression stayed calm. Another orb flew fast, unrelenting. He counted softly as two more collapsed instantly. He scanned the chaos, assessing numbers and formation. The remaining students trembled, unsure whether to attack. He paused, gaze narrowing toward Leducis, observing from afar. A subtle concern flickered beneath his cold stare. The enemies had regrouped, but confusion spread. One staggered up, unsure whether to fight or run. Footsteps echoed. The ground shook. Panic followed. All eyes turned. He was advancing, slow and unshaken. A student stood still, hands tied behind his back, facing forward. Blood dripped quietly downwards. The crowd noticed. Some froze, others whispered. Their expressions grew tense as unease spread among the group. He staggered forward. A gasp escaped nearby lips. The wound wasn't small and it hadn't stopped bleeding. Someone finally shouted, "He's bleeding!" Heads turned in shock. No one had realized it until now. His breathing was heavy. Despite the pain, he didn't fall. He kept walking, eyes hidden under bangs. She gasped quietly, her hand rising. The pain he carried finally registered on her face. With hesitation, she stepped closer. "I'll untie you first," she said gently, reaching for the ropes. Around them, the others watched in silence. None spoke. Shame, confusion, and guilt weighed heavily in silence. Lowering her gaze, she whispered the words, "I'm sorry." Her voice trembled more than her hands. He kept his head bowed, silent, hurt. But her apology seemed to reach the wall inside. A magic orb sliced through the air, glowing violently, heading straight toward the remaining hostile student. The boy screamed before it hit his body, hurled backward, pain exploding across his chest and arm. He fell hard, the crowd gasping. Behind him, the lone attacker slowly approached without breaking stride. Rude stopped. His eyes stayed cool. He silently observed the field, sensing the shift in control. Another enemy down. He counted silently. The 11th? No, the 12th. His tone held no satisfaction, just certainty. He turned slightly, surveying the aftermath. Only a few still stood. "The only ones left!" Across the hall, a small group remained, uniforms torn. They looked ready but unsure and shaken. One of them froze mid-breath, wide-eyed. The silent tension from Rude's presence hit them like stone. Surrounded by unconscious bodies and scattered magic, Rude stood alone. The floor echoed under his slow steps. One student whispered nervously, "Manon!" Panic spread. Their strongest member clenched his jaw, unsure what to believe. The floor was scattered with fallen students unmoving, unconscious. Their uniforms were torn, their strength gone. Others barely sat upright, wounded and breathless. Their hands trembled as they grasped the reality before them. One body lay face down, completely motionless. The silence made the aftermath feel heavier than the battle. Manon's eyes darted around. Each fallen ally confirmed the overwhelming strength of the lone remaining fighter. Footsteps approached slowly, heavy and controlled. Every step signaled dominance, and no one dared to intercept. From the stage, a group watched him. He stood alone below, calm, composed, gaze unwavering. A faint smirk appeared on his face, his tone light, yet chilling. He was unfazed. The rope hit the ground. It uncoiled silently, no longer binding, but symbolizing the shift in power. Behind him, the green-haired girl and wounded boy stood together, uncertain what would happen next. He lowered his eyes, silent. The moment stretched. No one moved, but tension wrapped the air. She stepped closer, unsure. Her voice trembled as she tried to speak. He didn't look back. His hand clenched the fabric tightly, still bleeding. The touch startled her, cutting off her words. Another girl called from behind, concern etched in her voice. "Rin, come here!" Her tone urgent. Rin turned slowly, unsure whether to stay or go. Her expression held hesitation and quiet guilt. A small group watched from a distance. None spoke. Their silence held tension, regret, and confusion. Rin's expression tensed. Her lips parted slightly, uncertain. Emotions flickered behind her steadily widening eyes. The question rang out. Everyone nearby heard it, accusatory, firm, and loud enough to break silence. The girl beside Rin trembled. Her voice cracked slightly. Her words struck deeper than anyone expected. Artian stood silently, gaze averted. He didn't respond. His breath slowed, but his posture stayed firm. Others shifted uncomfortably. One girl spoke up softly. "This is just so mean," she finally admitted. Rin finally spoke up, voice clear. Her expression was firm, driven by frustration and growing realization. She questioned the injustice aloud. Her words hung in the air, piercing the silence surrounding the group. The girl beside her responded quietly. She too carried doubt now, her confidence visibly shaken. Artian looked up slowly. Her words reached him. His expression stayed neutral, but something shifted in him. As Rin declared her stance, a figure suddenly crashed nearby. Her voice cracked mid-sentence in shock. Rin's eyes widened with confusion. Something unexpected had happened, and her focus broke instantly. The surrounding students gasped. Movement from behind caught everyone's attention as tension rose again. Artian snapped his head toward the impact. His purple eyes sharpened, instantly alert to danger. A student crashed to the ground, unconscious. Dust settled. His body didn't move. Artian turned swiftly, posture tight. His instincts screamed a threat was near, and it wasn't finished. Artian's eyes narrowed. His expression sharpened. Violet gaze locked toward the rising tension across the courtyard. Two students stood above. A crowd gathered below. The mood had shifted, now colder, more defensive. Manon stepped forward angrily. His voice rose. Fear masked behind insults hurled toward Artian and his ally. Rude's patience faded. He muttered lowly, uninterested in threats or fear-mongering about monsters and reputation. He pointed calmly. "Look." One word. Direct. His posture steady, unaffected. The air pulsed with growing weight. Rude's voice remained calm as he explained the truth bullies act in groups. Victims stand alone. He stared directly at Manon. The crowd realized it too. The real monster wasn't Artian.